Imagine a world where history isn't complete, where every artifact we uncover only raises more questions. For thousands of years, civilizations have left behind clues, mysterious carvings on stones, ancient tools no one should have been able to build, forgotten tombs that seem to rewrite the past. In this video, we continue our journey into the deepest mysteries of archaeology, from strange ruins buried under deserts, to ancient skulls hidden in caves, to objects so advanced they feel impossible. Each chapter takes us further into the unknown. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe. It really helps this channel grow. And tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from right now? And what time is it there? So get comfortable. Let's begin. The infant Buddha of Shark Bay. Imagine standing on the coast of Shark Bay, in Western Australia, where the ocean stretches endlessly into the horizon. The waves roll slowly, one after the other, with that familiar rhythm that makes you want to close your eyes and just listen. It's one of those places where silence has a weight of its own, where you feel both isolated and deeply connected to something larger. But beneath this calm surface, Shark Bay holds a mystery that doesn't quite fit with what we think we know about history. It begins not with a modern discovery, but with something far older, an artifact that seems almost impossible, a small statue of the infant Buddha, tied somehow to the Ming dynasty of China, yet found here, thousands of miles away, in the sands of Australia. The statue itself is simple, not overly ornate, not gilded in gold or inlaid with jewels. It is made of stone, carved carefully, with features that unmistakably resemble the early Chinese depictions of the Buddha as a child. You can picture it: rounded cheeks, a serene expression, tiny hands raised in a gesture that suggests blessing or enlightenment. It is not a style native to Australia. Nothing about it belongs to the Aboriginal traditions, nor does it resemble anything from the cultures of Polynesia, Micronesia, or the islands across the Pacific. It is distinct, and it carries the unmistakable fingerprint of Ming craftsmanship. So the question begins to form: how did such an object, tied to a dynasty that flourished in China between the 14th and 17th centuries, end up buried on the far side of the Indian Ocean, in a land that European explorers hadn't even mapped at the time? Was it dropped by chance, carried by accident? Or does it point toward a much deeper connection between Asia and Australia, long before the Europeans claimed discovery? When archaeologists and historians first looked at the artifact, they hesitated. It was easier to dismiss it than to explore the uncomfortable implications. Some argued it must have been planted, perhaps carried in modern times and later misplaced. But the more they studied, the less the easy explanations worked. The weathering on the stone, the mineral deposits that had built up on its surface, and the style of carving, all pointed to genuine age. This was not a trinket left behind by a tourist or a recent immigrant. It had been here for centuries. To understand the weight of this discovery, you have to step back into the time of the Ming dynasty. In the 15th century, the Ming emperors had opened the seas to ambitious voyages, and leading those voyages was the famous Admiral Zheng He, commanding vast treasure fleets that sailed across the Indian Ocean, to Africa, the Middle East, and perhaps even further. These were not small journeys, they were expeditions of hundreds of ships, carrying goods, treasures, and emissaries to display the wealth and reach of the Ming Empire. Could one of those ships have drifted further than intended, carried by the winds and currents, reaching the shores of Australia? And if so, could the infant Buddha of Shark Bay be the quiet remnant of that forgotten journey? Shark Bay itself is not an accidental place. It is a natural harbor, with islands and reefs that make it both inviting and dangerous to sailors. For anyone drifting eastward across the Indian Ocean, carried south along the currents, this bay would have been one of the first safe harbors in a wild and unfamiliar land. If a ship had landed here, even briefly, artifacts might have been left behind, objects dropped, traded, or even buried intentionally. The statue could have been a religious token, a symbol meant to bring protection to sailors in uncharted waters. As you think about that possibility, the story expands. If Ming sailors really reached Australia, it would change not just a small corner of history, but the entire framework we've been taught. It would mean that Australia was not the untouched, isolated land that European explorers described centuries later. It would mean there were earlier encounters, earlier connections, and perhaps even exchanges that we've lost to time. It would suggest that ancient civilizations were far more connected than we give them credit for. But the story doesn't end there. What makes this statue even more unsettling is the context of where it was found. The coastline around Shark Bay has long been a place of Aboriginal settlement. For thousands of years, Aboriginal Australians lived here, fished in these waters, and told stories about spirits that came from the sea. Some oral traditions describe visitors who arrived long before Europeans. The descriptions are vague, layered in myth, but when viewed through the lens of this discovery, they raise a startling possibility. Were these stories faint memories of ancient contact, perhaps with Chinese sailors who stepped ashore, left behind gifts, and then disappeared back into the ocean. Archaeologists who tried to press these questions often ran into resistance. Official history is slow to change. It prefers clean narratives, boundaries, and certainties. The discovery of a Ming-era infant Buddha in Australia doesn't fit neatly anywhere. It is a loose thread, and pulling on it risks unraveling larger assumptions about the past. So the statue remains in a kind of historical limbo, acknowledged, but not explained, studied, but not fully integrated into the larger story of Australia's past. What we are left with, then, is the image of this tiny figure, carved centuries ago, carried by hands we'll never know, across oceans we cannot map in detail, placed in the sands of Shark Bay, where the tide still moves in and out, day after day. It's a reminder that the past is never as closed as we think. It is porous, full of hidden crossings, silent travelers, and forgotten exchanges. Every so often, something like this statue surfaces, and for a moment, we are forced to stop and wonder how much has been left out of the history books. And as the waves continue to move across the Shark Bay shoreline, you can imagine the sailors who might have once stood here, looking out at the same ocean. They may have prayed to this very statue, asking for safe passage home, never knowing that centuries later, their presence would be questioned, doubted, and nearly erased. Yet the infant Buddha remains, silent and enduring, a witness to a journey we are only beginning to understand. Pharaoh Akhenaten's mysterious medallion. When we speak of Pharaoh Akhenaten, we are already stepping into one of the strangest corners of ancient Egyptian history. He was the ruler who defied tradition, the one who broke away from the centuries-old worship of Egypt's many gods, and instead dedicated his reign to a single mysterious deity, the Aten, the sun disk. His rule was brief but dramatic, marked by sweeping changes in art, religion, and even how the royal family presented themselves to the world. But what if the story of Akhenaten holds more than political or religious controversy? What if, hidden within the sands of Egypt, there lies a physical object that suggests his beliefs were not just spiritual experimentation, but something entirely otherworldly? That is where the story of the so-called Akhenaten medallion begins. According to several accounts, the artifact surfaced in the late 19th century, during a wave of excavations in Amarna, the capital city built by Akhenaten himself. Amarna was a place unlike any other in ancient Egypt, designed to worship the Achaean and abandoned soon after Akhenaten's death. In the midst of broken statues and shattered stone tablets, a small but unusual disc-shaped medallion is said to have been found. What makes it stand out is not just its connection to Akhenaten, but the designs carved upon its surface. The medallion does not resemble the elegant jewelry of the New Kingdom. Instead, it has a crude, almost mechanical appearance. At its center is an elongated figure, with features strikingly similar to how Akhenaten himself was portrayed: an elongated head, almond-shaped eyes, and a thin, almost alien-like frame. Surrounding this central figure are what appear to be concentric circles, some overlapping in patterns that bear no resemblance to Egyptian hieroglyphs or solar symbols. To some, it looks more like a diagram than a decoration. When scholars first heard of this object, it was largely dismissed as a forgery. Egypt was full of looters and opportunists, especially in the 19th century, and strange items often turned up in Cairo's bustling antique markets. But what unsettled researchers was that the style of carving matched techniques known from Amarna itself. The stone was consistent with the limestone quarried, locally in the region, and while no direct record of the medallion's discovery has survived, fragments of Amarna art do seem to echo some of its bizarre features. One of the most debated aspects is the central figure. Was it Akhenaten himself, stylized in the unique art style of the Amarna period, or was it something more, an intentional depiction of a being unlike humans? Supporters of the latter theory point to Akhenaten's unusual appearance, often described in ancient records. His statues show a ruler with a long face, wide hips, and a strangely feminine physique. For centuries, historians explained this as artistic experimentation. But for those who see the medallion as evidence, Akhenaten was not just a reformer. He was in contact with something far beyond human understanding. The medallion's circular patterns also fuel speculation. Some researchers argue they resemble planetary orbits, or even a star map. One fringe interpretation suggests it depicts the Aten not as a sun disk, but as a craft, something technological rather than divine. These ideas may sound far-fetched, but they persist because of Akhenaten's radical religious shift. Why would a pharaoh risk angering Egypt's powerful priesthood by erasing the gods of old, unless he believed he had witnessed something undeniable? As centuries passed, Akhenaten's reign was all but erased from history. His city was abandoned, his monuments destroyed, his name chiseled out from temple walls. For the Egyptians who came after him, his rule was seen as a dangerous mistake. But for modern eyes, that erasure only deepens the mystery. Was Akhenaten silenced because he was a heretic, or because he knew something forbidden. The medallion's supposed trail is equally puzzling. By the early 20th century, it was rumored to be in a private collection in Europe. Some claimed it had been taken by a wealthy collector in Germany before World War II. Others said it was moved to Britain, where it disappeared into the vaults of a museum, never displayed to the public. To this day, no verified photographs exist. What we have instead are sketches made by early antiquarians showing a disc with geometric patterns and a strange central figure. Skeptics point out that the lack of evidence is enough to dismiss the medallion entirely, and yet, every so often, whispers of its resurfacing appear in academic circles. In the 1990s, a researcher claimed to have seen it briefly in a private archive, describing its carvings as far more complex than previously thought. But the story faded, with no way to confirm it. This leaves us in the strange position of not knowing whether the Akhenaten medallion ever truly existed. If it did, it could be one of the most startling relics of the ancient world, an artifact that ties together Egypt's most mysterious pharaoh, unusual depictions of his body, and his devotion to a god unlike any worshipped before or after. If it did not, then it remains an enduring legend, one that refuses to vanish, much like Akhenaten's strange and brief place in history. As you let your mind drift on this puzzle, consider how history often feels like a tapestry with missing threads. The official record tells one version, neat and tidy, but in the gaps there are possibilities that stretch far beyond what we are comfortable believing. Whether the medallion was real or imagined, it reminds us that Akhenaten's world was already filled with mystery, transformation, and secrets we may never fully uncover. And perhaps that is why his story continues to fascinate. For in the forgotten ruins of Amarna, and in the whispers of a medallion that may or may not exist, lies a glimpse into a chapter of human history that feels more like a legend from the stars than a record from the sands. Footprints on Crete. Older than humanity. Imagine standing on a sun-soaked shoreline in Crete. The waves roll in slowly, brushing over smooth stones that have been here longer than civilization itself. Now imagine bending down, brushing sand aside, and noticing something that looks strangely familiar. A footprint. Not from today, not from last week, not even from the time of ancient Minoans who lived on Crete thousands of years ago. This footprint is far older. Scientists who studied it say it could be 5.7 million years old. That's a number so large that the human mind struggles to picture it. To put it in perspective, the first known stone tools are only about 2.6 million years old. The first modern humans, around 300,000 years ago. Yet here, on a Greek island in the Mediterranean, is a footprint that looks human, but predates us by millions of years. The story begins in 2002, when researchers first stumbled upon these strange impressions near the village of Trakalos in western Crete. At first, the marks looked like nothing more than shallow dents in hardened sediment, but with closer inspection, they revealed the outline of toes, a heel, and an arch. In other words, a footprint. The shape was not like the paw of an animal. It was not like a hoof. It wasn't random erosion. It looked strikingly similar to a human step. The discovery immediately set off debates. Because if the dating was correct, 5.7 million years, then the footprint belonged to a creature walking upright at a time when mainstream science tells us that our ancestors had not even left Africa yet. To understand why this find is so controversial, you need to step back into the history of human evolution. For decades, the story has been relatively consistent. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, appeared less than 500,000 years ago. Before us came other hominins, like Homo erectus, about 1.9 million years ago, and Australopithecus, who lived 4 million years ago. The famous Lucy skeleton, Australopithecus afarensis, walked upright in East Africa around 3.2 million years ago. But the footprints in Crete push that timeline back more than 2 million years before Lucy. If they are genuine hominin footprints, then the evolutionary story becomes much more complicated. One of the key details about the Crete footprints is their shape. Scientists describe them as having a forward-pointing big toe, aligned with the others, just like modern humans. Most apes and earlier hominins had diverging big toes, almost like a thumb, to help them climb trees. This makes the Crete prints unusual. They suggest an upright walker with a foot much closer to ours than what should have existed at that time. The impressions also show evidence of a heel strike, meaning the creature placed its heel down first when walking, another human-like trait. But then comes the puzzle. How could a being with such human-like feet exist nearly 6 million years ago, and not in Africa but in the Mediterranean? The traditional view is that humanity's story begins in Africa. From there, our ancestors spread outward into the rest of the world. Yet the Crete footprints suggest another possibility. Could early hominins have existed in Europe, side by side with African ancestors? Or could migrations have occurred far earlier than we thought, carrying upright walkers across continents long before the textbooks suggest? Dating these footprints was not simple. The rocks where they were found belonged to a geological layer known as the Messinian. Around 5.7 million years ago, the Mediterranean Sea was going through dramatic changes. During what scientists call the Messinian salinity crisis, the Mediterranean nearly dried up, leaving salt deposits in strange environments across the region. The footprints were fossilized in layers from that era. This gives scientists confidence in the age. It wasn't a matter of guesswork, it was tied to well-studied geological history. Still, skepticism remained. Could they have been carved by erosion? Could they have been created by an animal with a vaguely foot-like shape? The debate continued. Some researchers compared the Crete prints to the famous Laetoli footprints found in Tanzania. The Laetoli tracks, discovered in the 1970s, are about 3.6 million years old and were left by Australopithecus afarensis. Those prints are widely accepted as clear evidence of early human ancestors walking upright. The Crete prints, however, are older by more than 2 million years. If both are genuine, then upright walking did not begin in Africa at 3.6 million years ago. It was happening in Europe millions of years earlier. That idea challenges one of the most deeply held assumptions about our origins. The controversy grew louder when scientists published a study in 2017 confirming the 5.7 million year dating and emphasizing the human-like shape of the footprints. Critics argued that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Couldn't the impressions be from a bear or some unknown mammal? Yet bears don't walk with aligned toes and arched soles, nor do they create consistent left-right step patterns like the ones at Trackylos. The evidence pointed back to a bipedal walker. Now imagine this for a moment, a small group of upright beings walking along the edge of what was then a strange Mediterranean shoreline, millions of years before history began. Their steps press into soft sediment, leaving behind impressions that would eventually turn to stone. They vanish, their existence erased by time, until one day their prints are uncovered by researchers puzzled at what they're seeing. It feels almost like a message across time. We were here. Of course, science requires caution. Not everyone accepts the footprints as proof of ancient humans in Europe. Some argue they may belong to a creature related to us, but not directly human. Others suggest convergent evolution, where different species develop similar traits independently. But even with cautious interpretation, the Crete footprints open doors to new possibilities. Maybe human evolution wasn't a straight line from Africa outward. Maybe it was a branching tree, with different groups experimenting with upright walking in different regions of the world, some of which left no descendants. There's also a deeper mystery. If upright walkers were in Crete nearly 6 million years ago, why don't we find more fossils of them? Bones, tools, settlements, all the things we expect from ancient humans are missing. It's possible that erosion and geological changes wiped away most traces. Or perhaps these beings were never numerous, leaving behind only a few fleeting steps. Their presence, if real, was temporary. Yet even temporary steps are enough to challenge an entire timeline. Over the years, more analysis has been done. Digital scans of the footprints show details too specific to dismiss. The prints reveal pressure points where toes pushed off, confirming the motion of walking. Some scientists have even argued that they are more human-like than the Laetoli prints. Still, without skeletal remains, the debate may never fully settle. The footprints stand as silent evidence, but not enough to rewrite textbooks completely. For those who love mysteries, this is where the fascination lies. We are left with possibilities. Were the prints made by an unknown species of early hominin who lived in Europe long before we thought? Were they the result of migrations far earlier than science currently believes? Or are they simply a remarkable case of mistaken identity? Shapes in the rock that resemble human feet but are not. Each option carries profound implications. As you think about it, let your mind drift. Picture the ancient shoreline, with strange animals roaming under a Mediterranean sun. Imagine a figure walking slowly, upright, pressing bare feet into soft earth. The water glistens. A breeze carries salt in the air. The creature doesn't know it is making history. It doesn't know that millions of years later, humans will look down at its footprints and question everything they thought they knew about where they came from. Whether the footprints truly belong to a human ancestor or something else entirely, they remind us of a simple truth. The story of humanity is not finished. It's not a straight path with clear answers. It's full of gaps, surprises, and discoveries waiting to unsettle us. Each footprint, whether in Africa, Crete, or elsewhere, adds a piece to the puzzle, and sometimes those pieces don't fit the way we expect. So the next time you think of human history beginning just a few 100,000 years ago, remember the footprints on Crete. They sit quietly, older than Lucy, older than the tools of early humans, older than humanity itself. They whisper that the story of who we are and where we came from might be far more complex than we dare to imagine. The oldest human face. In the rolling hills of Georgia, near the village of Domaines, archaeologists stumbled upon something that would completely change the way we think about human origins. For decades, textbooks carried a fairly straightforward story about how humanity spread across the world. But then, a single discovery rewrote entire chapters. It was here that researchers uncovered what is now known as the Dmanisi Skull 5, a remarkably well-preserved fossil that many call the oldest human face. At first glance, Skull 5 doesn't look like much. It is small, about the size of a modern chimpanzee's brain case, and yet it is strikingly human in its features. The jaw, the teeth, the contours of the skull. These pieces fit together in a way that forces scientists to rethink the neat categories they once placed early humans into. This fossil, belonging to the species Homo erectus, dates back nearly 1.8 million years. That number alone makes it one of the earliest direct glimpses we have into the story of our ancestors outside of Africa. What makes the Dmanisi find so fascinating is not just the age, but the completeness. Skull 5 is not a fragment or a broken piece. It is almost an entire head, frozen in time, offering an intimate look at the face of a human who lived nearly 2 million years ago. When you think about it, that means this skull predates almost everything we know about history, agriculture, or civilization. Long before the pyramids, long before written language, even long before Neanderthals, there was a person walking the landscape of Eurasia, leaving behind the face we now study. The site at Dmanisi has yielded several other skulls as well, belonging to early members of the Homo lineage. But Skull 5 is unique. Its features are unusual, combining a small brain case with a large face and big teeth. In modern terms, it doesn't quite fit the categories we expect. For a long time, scientists argued over whether these fossils should be classified as multiple species or as variations within Homo erectus. But the discovery of Skull 5 showed just how diverse early humans could be, even within the same population. To understand the significance, imagine standing in the caves of Dmanisi nearly 2 million years ago. The people who lived here were not primitive brutes as we sometimes imagine. They made simple stone tools, they hunted and scavenged. They lived in small groups, sharing food and protecting one another. The discovery of animal bones with cut marks at the site suggests they butchered meat, a critical step in human evolution that provided the calories needed to sustain larger bodies and eventually larger brains. One striking detail about the Dmanisi fossils is the variation among them. The 5 skulls uncovered at the site look surprisingly different from one another. One has a long, narrow face, another has a shorter, rounder shape, and Skull 5 seems to combine extremes, small brain but big jaws. In earlier times, scientists might have divided them into several species, but because these remains were all found together in the same place and date to the same period, it seems more likely they were part of one community. That means early humans were much more variable than we once believed. This challenges the traditional model that human evolution was a simple ladder of progress, with one species neatly replacing the last. Instead, it suggests a tree with many branches, some overlapping, some surviving together, and some dying out. Skull 5 became a kind of evidence that our ancestors were not fixed categories but living, breathing individuals with differences, just like modern humans today. Another mystery lies in the fact that these early humans left Africa far earlier than once believed. For a long time, the story was that Homo erectus developed in Africa and then spread out around 1 million years ago. But the Dmanisi finds push that migration back to nearly 1.8 million years. This suggests that humans were exploring, migrating, and adapting to new environments much earlier than anyone expected. What makes the site even more extraordinary is the preservation. The Dmanisi fossils were found in layers of volcanic ash and sediment, almost as if time had stopped. It is rare in archaeology to find skulls so complete, because bones usually decay or are broken apart. Yet here, we have entire heads, jaws, and even stone tools preserved together. This provides an incredibly detailed snapshot of a single community frozen in time. One of the most debated aspects of Skull 5 is its small brain size. At just about 550 cubic centimeters, it is closer to Australopithecus, the more ape-like ancestors in Africa, than to later Homo erectus specimens. And yet, this individual lived outside of Africa, hunted animals, and used tools. It raises a critical question: how much brain power did it really take to migrate thousands of miles and survive in new landscapes? Skull 5 suggests that early humans didn't need big brains to leave Africa. They simply needed cooperation, adaptability, and persistence. When paleoanthropologists first revealed Skull 5 to the world in 2013, it was headline news. The face looked both familiar and alien. You could recognize the human shape in it, but also see how far we've come. For scientists, it was like looking into a mirror that reflected not just one ancestor, but the diversity of all who came before us. The Dmanisi fossils also force us to ask an uncomfortable question. What if many of the species we thought were separate, like Homo habilis, Homo rudolfensis, and early Homo erectus, were not truly different species at all, but variations within one group? If so, Skull 5 may represent the missing piece that shows how all of these early forms connect. It hints that the story of human evolution is not about clean divisions, but about flexibility and survival. Think for a moment about what this means. Nearly 2 million years ago, a small group of humans, smaller than us, less equipped, with fewer tools and no fire, managed to survive in the harsh landscapes of Eurasia. They faced predators like saber-toothed cats and hyenas. They endured freezing winters without modern clothing, and yet they left behind the first traces of humanity outside Africa. The oldest human face we see in Skull 5 is not just a fossil. It is a reminder that survival was never about being perfect or fully developed. It was about adapting, enduring, and moving forward. The individual whose skull was preserved at Dmanisi could not have imagined the civilizations that would come after, yet his or her presence helped set the stage for everything that followed. Today, when you look at a reconstruction of Skull 5, you see a being who is both us and not us. The brow ridges, the wide jaw, the small brain case, they remind us of how far back our lineage goes. But there is also something profoundly familiar in the face, a trace of recognition across millions of years. The Dmanisi site continues to be excavated, and each discovery adds new details to the story. Archaeologists believe more fossils may still be hidden in the layers of volcanic sediment, waiting to tell us even more about the first humans who ventured beyond Africa. And so, Skull 5 remains a mystery, not just of age, but of meaning. It forces us to rethink what it means to be human. Was this individual primitive, or was he one of the first explorers of our kind? Was his small brain a limitation, or was it proof that intelligence is not measured only in size? These are questions that scientists still debate, but one thing is certain: the face of Dmanisi has become one of the most important discoveries in the history of anthropology. As you reflect on it, imagine standing in that ancient Georgian valley, the wind moving through the hills, the volcanic rock under your feet. Somewhere nearby, nearly 2 million years ago, a human being stood in the very same spot. His face, now preserved as Skull 5, bridges the gap between us and the deep past. It is a face that tells us the human journey began much earlier, and in much more varied ways than we ever believed. The James Ossuary inscription. The artifact we are about to step into is one of the most disputed and fascinating discoveries in biblical archaeology. At first glance, it looks like nothing more than a simple limestone box, weathered and pale, with a faint inscription scratched into its side. But this box, known as the James Ossuary, has ignited decades of debate, lawsuits, and controversy, because if its inscription is genuine, it could be the only known archaeological artifact that directly references Jesus of Nazareth. The ossuary itself was not discovered in a controlled excavation. Instead, it surfaced in the antiquities market in the early 2000s, owned by a private collector in Israel named Oded Golan. Ossuaries were common in 1st century Judea. They were small stone boxes, usually made of limestone, used to hold the bones of the deceased after the body had decayed. Families would place the bones into these ossuaries and often inscribe the name of the deceased on the outside. Thousands of such ossuaries have been found across Israel, often bearing names that were popular at the time: Joseph, Mary, Judah, Simon. But this particular ossuary carried an inscription that made it stand apart from the rest. The words scratched in Aramaic read, "James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus." If authentic, this would mean the box once contained the bones of James, who according to Christian tradition was the brother of Jesus. That, in turn, would make this one of the earliest physical pieces of evidence pointing to Jesus' existence outside of written texts. Imagine the weight of that claim, an artifact tying together 3 individuals central to the New Testament. But from the very beginning, the James Ossuary stirred doubt. Scholars and archaeologists immediately began questioning whether the inscription was genuine, or whether part or all of it had been forged. Some experts pointed out that the ossuary itself is certainly ancient. The style of the box, the limestone material, and the partial wear patterns all suggest it was carved and used in the 1st century. The controversy was not about the box, but about the inscription. Was the phrase "brother of Jesus" added later, by someone attempting to create a powerful relic? The Israel Antiquities Authority launched a high-profile investigation. Their experts argued that the inscription showed inconsistencies. They claimed the words "James, son of Joseph" looked authentic, weathered into the stone naturally, but the final part, "brother of Jesus," appeared to have been added more recently. To them, it was too suspicious, too convenient, and lacked the same depth of patina, that natural film that forms over centuries on stone surfaces. The case went further than just scholarly dispute. It turned into a full legal battle. In 2004, Oded Golan was indicted in what was called the forgery trial of the century, accused of faking the inscription to increase the artifact's value. For years the trial dragged on. Experts testified on both sides. Some claimed the inscription was without doubt a modern fake. Others insisted that laboratory analysis showed ancient patina inside the grooves of the letters, meaning it had to be old. The trial stretched over 7 years. Finally, in 2012, the court acquitted Golan of forgery charges related to the inscription, not because the judges were convinced it was authentic, but because the prosecution could not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that it was fake. The ruling left the ossuary in a strange position, neither definitively genuine nor conclusively debunked. To this day, scholars remain divided. Some argue that the statistical chance of 3 such names, James, Joseph, and Jesus, appearing together by coincidence, is small but not impossible. After all, these names were extremely common in 1st century Judea. Others hold that the likelihood of it belonging to the James described in the New Testament is incredibly slim without more supporting evidence. Yet, whether authentic or not, the James ossuary continues to fascinate. Its very existence highlights the powerful role artifacts play in human belief, identity, and history. A small stone box, simple in design, has stirred some of the largest debates in biblical archaeology. For many, it is a relic of faith. For others, a cautionary tale about forgery and the antiquities market. What cannot be denied is the mystery. Even after decades of tests, debates, and courtroom battles, no one can say with certainty whether the inscription was chiseled in the 1st century or by a modern hand. And so, the James ossuary remains in a liminal space, part artifact, part enigma, hovering between history and legend. As you let this story settle, picture the limestone box resting quietly, its inscription faint under the dim light of a museum or a private collection. Whether or not it once held the bones of James, brother of Jesus, it certainly holds within it the enduring tension between faith and science, history and belief, certainty and doubt. The Mayan 8119-day calendar. The Maya civilization left behind countless mysteries. Their stone cities still rise from the jungles, their pyramids still stand against time, and their glyphs continue to puzzle scholars. But among their most baffling legacies is something not carved on a monument or hidden inside a temple, but written in cycles of numbers. The Mayan 8119-day calendar. At first glance, it doesn't make sense. Most ancient calendars are based on things we can see in the sky. The Earth's orbit around the sun gives us the year. The moon's phases give us the month. Even the Mayan long count calendar, famous for the 2012 predictions, can be understood as a massive system tied to celestial cycles. But the 8119-day calendar is different. It doesn't seem to fit. Why count in cycles of 8119 days? Why not 800 or 820? Why choose a number that doesn't align with the seasons, the sun, or even the moon? For a long time, it seemed like nonsense, a riddle carved into stone that no one could solve. The glyphs describing this cycle appear in several Mayan codices and inscriptions. They are careful, deliberate, not an accident. The Maya clearly placed importance on this strange number. And yet, for generations, scholars struggled to understand why. Some believed it was ceremonial, connected to rituals we no longer remember. Others thought it might have been a way to track planets. But when they tried to match 8119 days with the visible paths of Mercury, Venus, or Mars, it didn't quite fit. It looked like the Maya had created a calendar cycle that was simply too strange to decode. But the Maya were not careless. Their knowledge of astronomy was far beyond what we once imagined. They tracked eclipses with astonishing accuracy. They understood the cycles of Venus so precisely that they could predict its appearances centuries in advance. If they created an 8119-day cycle, there had to be a reason. The breakthrough came when researchers stopped looking at the 8119 days as a single cycle and instead began to think in multiples. What if it wasn't meant to stand alone? What if 8119 days was only one piece of a much larger puzzle? When the cycle is multiplied 4 times, 8119 days repeated 4 times in a row, you get 3,276 days. That is almost exactly 9 years. And here, something remarkable happens. Many planetary cycles begin to align within this period. The movements of Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn all start to fall into place when measured against this expanded version of the 8119-day cycle. It was as if the Maya had created a massive clock that ticked in larger rhythms, not just in the short span of months or years, but across the grand orbits of the planets themselves. Think about what that means. To the Maya, time was not just something measured by the sun rising and setting. Time was woven into the very motion of the heavens. Planets were not distant lights in the sky. They were markers of divine order, symbols of gods moving across the firmament. By using 819-day counts and then repeating them in longer cycles, the Maya may have been encoding planetary harmonies into their calendar system. Imagine a Mayan priest standing at the top of a pyramid, glyphs in hand, tracking the sky. He is not looking at a single year. He is not even looking at a single human life. He is looking at time as a cosmic order, something that stretches across generations. With the 819-day cycle, he could align rituals, ceremonies, and prophecies with the dance of the planets. To us, it seems complicated. To him, it was order, an order gifted by the gods themselves. But even with this discovery, the mystery is not solved completely. Some scholars argue that the 819-day system wasn't about astronomy at all. Instead, it might have been tied to ritual cycles, ceremonies that had to take place at exact intervals, echoing the rhythm of the heavens but focused on the human world. Others believe it might have been a calendar for divination, a way of predicting events by mapping them onto a cycle that repeated again and again. There's another layer of mystery too. The number 819 itself may not be arbitrary. In Mayan mathematics and cosmology, numbers carried symbolic power. For example, the number 13 was sacred, tied to levels of the heavens. The number 20 was central, linked to the human body with its 20 fingers and toes. What then was the hidden meaning of 819? Was it chosen because it encoded something beyond simple arithmetic? Was it a number that carried the weight of cosmic balance? The truth is, we may never fully know. Much of the Mayan world was destroyed in the fires of conquest, their codices burned, their knowledge silenced. What we have left are fragments, glyphs on stone, numbers carved in places where the jungle now grows thick. And yet, even those fragments whisper. They tell us that the Maya were not just builders of pyramids and kings of cities. They were astronomers, philosophers, keepers of time itself. The 819-day calendar is a reminder of how differently they saw the world. We measure days, months, years. We keep time in units we think are simple, practical. But the Maya saw time as something layered, vast, interwoven with cycles upon cycles. They built calendars that extended far beyond the span of a human life. They created systems that reached into the stars and stretched across centuries. Today, when we look at the glyphs of the 819-day cycle, we are looking into a different way of thinking. A way of seeing the universe, not as chaos, but as rhythm. Not as chance, but as pattern. The Maya lived by those patterns. They worshipped through them. They saw their destiny within them. And though we may never fully unlock the secret of why they chose 819 days, the very fact that they did so is a mystery that pulls us closer to their world. It leaves us with questions that have no easy answers. Did they know something we don't? Were they mapping planetary movements with more precision than we realized? Or was this about something deeper, something spiritual, something we cannot measure with science alone? As we close this chapter, imagine standing in a ruined Mayan city as night falls. The jungle hums around you. The stars rise overhead, sharp and clear in the dark sky. Somewhere in those stars, the planets are moving, their paths known to the Maya centuries before telescopes. And as you look up, you begin to wonder, was the 819-day calendar a way of keeping time, or was it a way of keeping harmony with the sky, with the gods, and with the mystery of existence itself? The Los Lunas Decalogue Stone. Deep in the desert of New Mexico, resting at the base of a small mesa near the town of Los Lunas, lies a stone unlike anything else in North America, known as the Los Lunas Decalogue Stone, or sometimes called the Mystery Stone. This massive boulder has sparked heated debates among archaeologists, linguists, and explorers for decades. At first glance, it looks like any other weathered rock sitting quietly under the desert sun, but if you get closer, carved into its surface are rows of inscriptions, lines that resemble ancient Hebrew script. The carvings are not random scratches or natural markings. They are carefully etched characters, forming words and phrases that many believe to be a version of the Ten Commandments, written in what appears to be a variant of Paleo-Hebrew. The moment this detail was noticed, questions poured in. What was a script from the ancient Near East doing on a stone in New Mexico? How could something like this exist, so far from where it belonged? The mystery began gaining attention in the 1930s, when people in the area first spoke of the stone, but locals claim it was known long before then, and that the markings had been there for generations. Over time, word spread that this wasn't just a simple inscription. Some scholars who studied the writing insisted it was authentic and represented an ancient Hebrew text, perhaps thousands of years old. Others dismissed it as a hoax, possibly carved in the 19th century. The location of the stone itself adds another layer of intrigue. It isn't hidden away in a cave or buried deep in the ground. Instead, it stands out in the open, tilted at an angle where the desert winds and rains have been wearing it down for centuries. The inscription covers a large part of its face, written in a script that curves downward across the surface, as if deliberately placed for readability. Those who examine the weathering of the grooves argue that they don't look fresh or modern, but instead appear aged, eroded naturally over a very long time. If the inscription is genuine, the implications are enormous. It would mean that ancient peoples from the Old World, possibly Hebrew travelers or traders, made contact with the Americas long before Columbus, leaving behind a written message. Could this suggest an early migration across the oceans, carrying their language and beliefs to new lands? If so, who were they, and why did they come? Did they carve the stone as a sacred marker, a testament of faith, or a symbol of settlement? Skeptics counter these ideas with caution. They argue that the style of writing is too close to modern interpretations of Paleo-Hebrew, making it unlikely to be truly ancient. Some suggest it may have been created by settlers, missionaries, or even forgers with knowledge of biblical texts. But then, there is the problem of scale. The carving is vast, deep, and precise, requiring immense effort to complete. If it were simply a modern hoax, why would someone go to such lengths, in such a remote location? And why would it remain undiscovered by wider society until recent times? Researchers who defend its authenticity point to the weathering patterns. The grooves seem too eroded to have been carved in recent centuries. Others add that the accuracy of the characters suggests deep knowledge of the script, beyond what the average person in the American Southwest would have known in the 1800s. Yet the truth remains hidden in uncertainty, as no definitive test has ever solved the debate. Even today, the stone attracts curious visitors, scholars, and seekers of the unknown. Standing before it, many feel a strange pull, as if the stone is silently holding on to secrets of journeys across the seas. Secrets of faith and survival, or perhaps secrets of a civilization that reached the Americas long before it was ever believed possible. Whether it is the work of ancient travelers or a much more recent creation, the Los Lunas Decalogue stone refuses to fade quietly into history. Instead, it stands under the New Mexico sky, half forgotten yet unforgettable, a silent voice carved into stone, reminding us of how much we still don't know about the past. The Fuente Magna Bowl. In the highlands of Bolivia, near the edges of Lake Titicaca, a single artifact has been stirring controversy for decades. It is not as massive as a temple, nor as imposing as an ancient city wall. Instead, it is a bowl, a stone vessel that has become the center of one of the most debated discoveries in South American archaeology. It is known as the Fuente Magna Bowl. At first glance, it looks like a ceremonial container, decorated with figures and inscriptions. But when scholars began to examine those inscriptions closely, they realized that this was no ordinary artifact. Etched into its surface, alongside local Andean motifs, appear markings that resemble cuneiform script, the wedge-shaped writing of the ancient Sumerians, a civilization that flourished thousands of miles away, on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. This one object raises a question that challenges everything we thought we knew about the ancient world. Could a bowl in Bolivia hold evidence of contact between South America and Mesopotamia long before the age of European exploration? Or is it an elaborate forgery designed to provoke debate? The bowl itself was reportedly discovered near Lake Titicaca, a region already steeped in mystery. The area is dotted with ancient ruins, megalithic constructions, and stories of civilizations that seem to vanish without explanation. The Fuente Magna bowl was found by local workers and brought to the attention of researchers. At first, it seemed like just another carved artifact, but its markings drew attention almost immediately. Some researchers claimed that the inscriptions on the bowl were written in Sumerian cuneiform and Proto-Sumerian script, making it appear as though this vessel somehow originated in Mesopotamia. If true, this would suggest transoceanic contact thousands of years before modern history acknowledges. Others, however, dismissed the object as a hoax, arguing that it was too convenient and lacked clear archaeological context. The difficulty lies in how the artifact was found. Unlike discoveries made in controlled excavations, the Fuente Magna bowl surfaced in a less formal way, without the kind of detailed documentation that archaeologists rely on to establish authenticity. Without this context, many historians hesitate to accept its claims. But even with that uncertainty, the bowl continues to capture attention, because the idea of Mesopotamian writing appearing in South America pushes the limits of our understanding. How could such a connection have been possible? Was there contact between ancient Sumerians and the people of the Andes? Did transoceanic voyages occur far earlier than history books suggest? Or is the bowl simply a clever creation from modern times, crafted to look ancient and mysterious? When we think about the Sumerians, we imagine one of the earliest civilizations in recorded history. They lived in Mesopotamia, in the fertile lands between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, more than 5,000 years ago. They invented cuneiform, one of the earliest known writing systems, and laid foundations for urban life, trade, and government. Their world was centered in the Middle East, not South America. On the other hand, the people of the Andean highlands were developing their own civilizations, constructing stone temples, agricultural terraces, and ritual centers. As far as mainstream history is concerned, these two worlds never touched, yet here is a bowl that seems to suggest otherwise. Supporters of the Fuente Magna bull's authenticity point to the details in its inscriptions. They argue that the writing is too complex to have been faked easily, especially since cuneiform was not widely understood in South America at the time the bull was reportedly discovered. They also suggest that ancient maritime voyages may have been more common than we realize. Some propose that seafaring Sumerians, or people influenced by them, might have crossed the Atlantic, intentionally or by accident, reaching the coasts of the Americas and leaving traces of their presence. Others speculate about shared origins, suggesting that perhaps cultural symbols spread across continents through forgotten migrations in deep prehistory. Skeptics remain unconvinced. They argue that without a documented archaeological excavation, the bull's origins cannot be trusted. Some suggest it could have been carved in modern times, inspired by knowledge of cuneiform. Others note that the mixture of local Andean symbols and Mesopotamian script seems unusual, as though someone attempted to combine two traditions to make the artifact appear more mysterious. For mainstream archaeology, the bull is not considered a confirmed ancient artifact, but rather an outlier, something that might be authentic but more likely an imitation. Still, the controversy refuses to fade. That is because the Fuente Magna bull touches on larger questions about the past. Could civilizations separated by oceans have interacted long before Columbus? If so, what else might we be missing in the record of human history? The idea of cross-oceanic contact is not as impossible as it once seemed. We know that ancient Polynesians navigated vast stretches of the Pacific Ocean, using little more than the stars and ocean currents. We know that Viking explorers reached the coasts of North America centuries before Columbus. If these journeys were possible, could others have occurred? Journeys that we have simply forgotten or failed to record. Lake Titicaca itself adds to the mystery. This high-altitude body of water is surrounded by ruins and myths of lost civilizations. The ancient city of Tiwanaku, not far from the lake, is filled with monumental stonework that continues to puzzle researchers. The Fuente Magna bull seems to fit into this environment of enigma. Even if it were a hoax, its appearance at this particular place feels strangely fitting. If it were genuine, it could point to one of the greatest historical puzzles of all time, a connection between Sumeria and the Andes. As researchers examine the bull, they look not only at its inscriptions but also at the stone itself, the carving techniques, and the style of decoration. These details may hold clues about its true origins. Some believe that microscopic analysis and advanced dating methods might one day settle the question. For now, though, the debate remains open. Every time the bull is discussed, it sparks new interest in the possibility that the history of human exploration is far older and more complex than textbooks suggest. Perhaps the Fuente Magna bull is a relic of an age when civilizations were more connected than we have imagined. Or perhaps it is a story, crafted in stone, designed to stir curiosity. Either way, it has achieved its goal. It has drawn people from around the world into the mystery of the Andes, the enigma of Lake Titicaca, and the question of whether human history still holds untold chapters. When you look at the Fuente Magna bull, you see more than just a carved vessel. You see a mirror reflecting our deepest curiosity about the past. Is it possible that civilizations separated by vast oceans once shared ideas, languages, and traditions? Or are we simply looking at the power of imagination projected onto an artifact? The answer remains elusive. But as long as the bull exists, the questions will continue, quietly waiting at the edge of Lake Titicaca, in the shadow of the mountains, where history and mystery still walk side by side. The Codex Gigas, the Devil's Bible. There are some objects in history that seem too strange, too large, or too mysterious to fully understand. The Codex Gigas is one of them. Known today as the Devil's Bible, it is a massive medieval manuscript that has puzzled historians, linguists, and ordinary readers for centuries. Its size alone makes it remarkable. Imagine a book so large that it takes two people to lift it. Bound in wood covered with leather, it stands almost a meter tall and weighs close to 75 kilograms. When you first see it, the scale feels unnatural, as though it was never intended for human use but belonged instead to some giant figure out of myth. The Codex Gigas was created in the early 13th century, likely in the Kingdom of Bohemia, in what is now the Czech Republic. The name Codex Gigas simply means giant book, and it fits perfectly. It contains 310 pages of vellum, prepared animal skin, that once required the hides of over 160 donkeys to produce. Within those pages lies a remarkable collection of texts, the entire Latin Bible, medical treatises, works of history, and even instructions on exorcisms. It is, in a way, a miniature library bound into a single enormous volume. But what makes it unforgettable, and what gives it its sinister nickname, is a single full-page illustration inside, an image of the devil, unlike any other found in medieval manuscripts. The legend connected to the book is just as compelling as its contents. According to a story that spread in the centuries after its creation, the Codex Gigas was written by a single monk in one single night. He had been sentenced to death, but pleaded for a chance to save his life by producing the world's greatest book. Realizing that such a task was impossible, he turned in desperation to the devil, who supposedly appeared and agreed to help him complete the manuscript in exchange for his soul. The monk accepted, and by dawn, the massive book was finished. Its pages filled with perfect calligraphy, its illustrations vivid and strange, and in the center, a chilling portrait of the devil himself. Of course, historians are quick to point out that no one person could realistically write such a massive book overnight. Careful study suggests that it may have taken decades for one scribe to complete it, possibly his entire lifetime. The handwriting throughout the manuscript is consistent, leading experts to believe that it was the work of a single author, but done slowly, page by page, over years. Even so, the legend persists because of the strangeness of the book itself, and because of that eerie portrait, green-skinned, clawed, crouching against a black background. The devil stares out of the page in a way that makes it unforgettable. But the Codex Gigas is not only a curiosity for its artwork, it is also one of the most complete surviving manuscripts of its time. Alongside the Bible, it includes texts like the works of Josephus, a Jewish historian of the 1st century, and Isidore of Seville, an early medieval scholar. There are medical recipes, magical formulas, and lists of saints. One section contains incantations intended to ward off evil spirits, making it a kind of manual of protection against the very devil depicted within it. It was both a holy book and a book of knowledge, combining scripture with science and superstition. Over the centuries, the Codex Gigas traveled through monasteries, libraries, and even royal collections. It eventually ended up in Sweden, where it is now preserved in the National Library in Stockholm. Remarkably, despite its age and size, the manuscript remains intact. Its binding still holds, its pages still turn, and its illustrations remain clear. The preservation is almost suspiciously perfect, which only adds to its aura of mystery. When you look closely at the text, you notice the uniformity of the handwriting. Page after page, line after line, the script remains steady and consistent, without noticeable changes in style or energy. This has led to speculation that it might indeed have been written by a single monk. Imagine the discipline, the long nights by candlelight, the repetition of forming letters with precision, knowing the task would last decades. If true, then the Codex Gigas is not just a book, it is a man's entire life bound into one object. And then there is the question of why the devil was included. Medieval manuscripts sometimes had illustrations of demons, but never like this. This is not a minor margin drawing or a symbolic flourish. This is a full page dominating the center of the book, positioned opposite a heavenly vision of the city of God. It almost feels like a confrontation, the forces of evil on one page, the vision of divine order on the other. Was this meant as a warning to monks reading it? Or was it simply part of the legend to make the book seem more fearsome, even in its own time? The Codex Gigas raises another mystery as well. What knowledge may have been lost from it? Several pages are missing from the manuscript, carefully cut out at some point in history. No one knows what they contained. Some believe they may have held banned texts, secret writings, or knowledge that was too dangerous to preserve. Others think they were simply lost by accident. The missing pages fuel speculation and add another layer of intrigue to the already uncanny volume. Today, the book is preserved under controlled conditions, and visitors can view it, though rarely touch it. Its size is still shocking, and standing before it feels less like looking at a book and more like standing before a relic or monument. The nickname the Devil's Bible has made it famous worldwide, but beyond the name and the legend, the Codex Gigas represents something deeper. It is the embodiment of medieval ambition, the desire to collect all knowledge into a single place, to create something lasting and monumental, even if it took a lifetime, and yet the story of the Devil's Bargain lingers. Perhaps because, in a way, it captures a truth about the manuscript. To dedicate your entire life to a single book, to sacrifice everything, time, health, freedom to create it, is in itself a kind of pact. Whether or not the devil had any hand in its creation, the Codex Gigas still feels like the work of someone who gave up everything to leave behind something that could never be forgotten. When you imagine that monk bent over his desk, filling page after page in silence, it is easy to see why legends formed. It is not just the devil in the book. It is the weight of obsession, the power of knowledge, and the haunting reminder that some works of human hands are so extraordinary, they feel otherworldly. The Codex Gigas survives, massive and mysterious, a reminder of how close human effort and myth can come to touching the impossible. The Baghdad Lion Weight. In the heart of Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers carved out one of the cradles of civilization, a curious artifact was unearthed. One that carries with it not only a sense of mystery, but also the symbolic weight of power, balance, and forgotten traditions. This artifact is known as the Baghdad Lion Weight. At first glance it might appear simple, a small sculpture in the shape of a lion, cast in bronze, resting firmly on its paws. But the deeper you look, the more its presence commands attention. It is both a tool and a symbol, a functional object that also embodies layers of meaning tied to an ancient world we still only partially understand. The lion itself, as a figure, has always been more than just an animal in Mesopotamian culture. It was a representation of strength, dominion, and the authority of rulers who claimed to control not just people but the natural forces around them. To find a lion cast into the form of a weight suggests that this object was never just practical, it was designed to represent power in the most subtle way possible. Every time it was lifted, every time it was placed on the scales, the hand that touched it was reminded of the authority embedded within it. Archaeologists who studied the lion weight noted its precision. This wasn't a decorative trinket, it was carefully made to a standard that fit within the measurement systems of its time. Weights were critical in ancient economies. They ensured fairness in trade, balance in exchanges, and trust between merchants. But to take such a utilitarian item and give it the form of a lion suggests something more, a deliberate merging of the mundane and the symbolic. Imagine markets in Baghdad, filled with the sounds of barter and negotiation, and in the middle of it, a bronze lion weight quietly anchoring every exchange to an unspoken reminder of authority and order. The exact origins of the Baghdad lion weight are debated. Some scholars link it to the Abbasid era, when Baghdad was at its height as a center of learning, science, and trade. Others suggest it may reach even further back, connected to traditions from Assyrian or Babylonian periods, where lions were deeply woven into royal iconography. What makes it puzzling is not only when it was created, but how such an object could carry so much layered meaning, practical, symbolic, and political, within such a compact form. The lion weight also raises another question. Was it used only in trade, or did it hold a ceremonial role? In many ancient cultures, weights weren't just about markets. They could represent cosmic balance, a reflection of how the world itself was ordered. Could the Baghdad lion have been a reminder that every transaction was part of a greater system, that balance wasn't just between buyer and seller, but also between humanity and the divine? If you look closer, the craftsmanship tells its own story. The bronze has been shaped with detail that gives the lion a lifelike presence. Its face is expressive, it stands firm, almost as if it's guarding something beyond its physical mass. For a culture where symbolism was never accidental, this was likely intentional. Lions had long been associated with kingship in Mesopotamia, often appearing in reliefs where rulers are shown slaying them, not as an act of cruelty, but as a metaphor for taming chaos. To turn a lion into a weight could very well have been a way of embedding that message into the very fabric of daily life. Every scale balanced with this lion was, in a way, a reassertion of order over disorder. The mystery deepens when we consider how it survived. Baghdad, through centuries, has seen periods of flourishing brilliance as well as devastating destruction. Empires rose and fell, and invasions left deep scars, particularly during the Mongol sack of the city in 1258, when much of its cultural heritage was lost. That this lion weight endured is almost miraculous. It suggests it was not easily discarded. Perhaps it was buried intentionally, safeguarded, or passed down quietly through generations who recognized its value beyond the bronze itself. Artifacts like this often go unnoticed compared to grander discoveries, but they are no less important. The Baghdad lion weight is not an enormous monument or a dazzling jewel. It is small, compact, and yet it captures a civilization's understanding of power, balance, and the unseen connections between the everyday and the eternal. Even now, its purpose is not fully agreed upon. Was it meant for merchants? Was it ceremonial? Was it simply practical, or was it symbolic? That lack of clarity is what makes it an unsolved mystery. Objects like these remind us that the past is not always straightforward. Sometimes the smallest things carry the deepest stories, and sometimes those stories remain just out of reach. As you imagine this artifact resting in the palm of your hand, picture the weight of history it carries, not just in bronze but in meaning. Imagine the ancient markets of Baghdad, the voices echoing through stalls, the clinking of coins, and in the middle of it all, this lion weight silently reminding everyone that balance was not just physical but universal. The Baghdad lion weight remains one of those quiet enigmas, an artifact that refuses to give away its full story, leaving us to wonder what else lies hidden in the objects that ancient civilizations left behind. The Piltdown Man hoax. Imagine being in England in the early 1900s. The world of science was buzzing with excitement. Archaeologists and fossil hunters were racing across continents, each hoping to uncover the missing link, the discovery that would finally connect humans to their ancient evolutionary past. At that time, evolution was still a relatively new and fiercely debated theory. Charles Darwin's ideas had stirred controversy, and every new bone or skull fragment seemed to carry the weight of answering one of humanity's deepest questions: where did we truly come from? It was in this charged atmosphere that an announcement in 1912 stunned the scientific world. A strange fossil had been unearthed in Piltdown, a small village in Sussex, England. What was revealed seemed extraordinary. The fragments included part of a skull and a jawbone. At first glance, the skull appeared strikingly human, while the jawbone looked more ape-like. Together, they seemed to suggest the perfect missing link, a creature halfway between ancient ape and modern human. The man who presented this discovery was Charles Dawson, an amateur archaeologist and solicitor. Dawson had long been searching for recognition, and this find was his greatest opportunity. He claimed the fossils came from a gravel pit near Piltdown. Alongside the bones, stone tools were also found, strengthening the impression that this was indeed an ancient human ancestor. The discovery was met with excitement, even celebration. Newspapers declared it a scientific triumph. Scientists hailed it as one of the most important finds in the study of human evolution. The fossil quickly gained the name Piltdown Man, or more formally, Eoanthropus dawsoni, literally, Dawson's Dawn Man. It was seen as evidence that early humans may have developed larger brains before other features, supporting a very Eurocentric idea that England could be the birthplace of modern humanity. But here is where the story takes its strange turn. For decades, Piltdown Man was accepted as genuine. Museums displayed replicas. Textbooks included it. Generations of students were taught that Piltdown Man represented a crucial step in human evolution. Yet, behind the scenes, there were always whispers of doubt. Some scientists pointed out that the jawbone didn't quite match the skull. Others noted that the teeth looked oddly worn, as if they had been filed down. Still, the prestige of the discovery and the respect given to Dawson and his supporters discouraged anyone from pressing too hard. The truth did not emerge until 1953, more than 40 years after the discovery. Using new methods of dating and analysis, scientists revealed what Piltdown Man truly was, a deliberate hoax. The skull fragments were indeed human, but they were from a medieval skeleton, only a few hundred years old. The jawbone, however, came from an orangutan, carefully stained to look ancient. The teeth had been filed down by hand to mimic human wear. The entire missing link had been fabricated. The revelation shook the scientific community. How could such a fraud have fooled experts for decades? The answer lies in human psychology as much as science. At the time, there was a strong desire for proof that Europe, and particularly England, was home to humanity's evolutionary roots. The Piltdown fossils fit those expectations perfectly. Confirmation bias, the tendency to see what we want to see, made many scientists overlook the inconsistencies. Even more intriguing is the question of who was responsible. Charles Dawson remains the most likely culprit, but some suggest he may have had accomplices. Dawson had a history of questionable finds, with several other artifacts linked to him later exposed as forgeries. It seems he craved recognition above all else, and the Piltdown Man was his masterstroke. Yet the skill involved in crafting the hoax, the staining, the filing, the clever assembly suggests Dawson might have had help, possibly from someone with access to museum collections or knowledge of anatomy. To this day, the true mastermind is debated. The Piltdown Man hoax teaches us several lessons. First, it shows how even scientists can be swayed by cultural expectations and national pride. At the time, real fossils from Africa and Asia were being discovered, pointing to humanity's origins outside Europe. But these discoveries challenged the narrative that many European scholars wanted to believe. Piltdown provided a comfortable alternative, and so it was embraced, even though it was false. Second, the hoax highlights the importance of skepticism in science. For decades, evidence that contradicted Piltdown Man was brushed aside. It was only when new technology emerged, fluorine dating and later radiocarbon methods, that the truth could no longer be ignored. The exposure of the hoax actually strengthened science in the long run, reminding researchers of the need for critical analysis and repeatable evidence. Imagine the scene in 1953, when the hoax was revealed. Museums quietly removed their displays. Textbooks had to be rewritten. Scholars who had built careers around Piltdown Man faced embarrassment. The fossil that once seemed like a triumph of discovery became instead a symbol of scientific caution. And yet the Piltdown story remains fascinating. There is something almost theatrical about it, a staged trick that fooled the world. The image of someone filing down teeth, staining bones with chemicals, and carefully planting them in a gravel pit, feels more like a crime novel than science. That this elaborate deception could shape scientific thinking for decades shows how powerful the desire for discovery can be. Even today, Piltdown Man is studied, not as a fossil, but as a case study in human fallibility. It reminds us that science is not immune to error, but it also shows the resilience of the scientific method. Eventually, falsehoods are exposed, and truth is corrected, even if it takes decades. The Piltdown hoax also invites us to reflect on ambition and recognition. What drives someone to fake a discovery of such scale? Was it greed, pride, or the longing to be remembered in history? For Charles Dawson, Piltdown secured him fame, but only temporarily. In the end, his legacy is not of a great discoverer, but of one of history's most notorious scientific frauds. The mystery lingers in smaller details too. Where exactly did the orangutan jaw come from? How did Dawson acquire it? Were there others involved who quietly assisted but never revealed themselves? Some even speculate that the hoax was meant as a prank on the scientific establishment, designed to expose its vanity. If so, it worked far too well. As we close this chapter, picture the Piltdown gravel pit. Once thought to hold the secrets of humanity's dawn, it instead concealed a deception, a false ancestor that misled science for decades. Yet from that falsehood, valuable lessons emerged, lessons about skepticism, bias, and the long journey toward truth. The Piltdown Man hoax remains one of the most enduring reminders in archaeology and anthropology that not every discovery is what it seems. Sometimes the bones we unearth tell not just the story of ancient life, but the story of human ambition, belief, and deception. And so the Piltdown Man continues to fascinate, not as the missing link in human evolution, but as a missing link in our understanding of how truth, error, and ambition shape the history of discovery. The Denisovan Bracelet. In the cold wilderness of Siberia, deep inside the Denisova Cave in the Altai Mountains, archaeologists uncovered something that changed the way we think about human history. Among the scattered remains of ancient bones and stone tools, they found a fragment of a bracelet. At first glance, it might seem like an ordinary artifact, yet this object holds within it a puzzle that refuses to be solved. It is known today as the Denisovan Bracelet, and the more you learn about it, the stranger it becomes. To understand why this bracelet is so mysterious, we need to step back into the world of the Denisovans. Until just over a decade ago, almost no one had even heard of them. They were not in our history books, and there was no clear evidence that they had ever existed. The Denisova Cave changed all of that. Inside, researchers discovered the remains of a finger bone belonging to a young girl, and through DNA analysis, they realized it belonged to a completely different branch of the human family tree. These weren't Neanderthals. They weren't modern humans. They were something else. They were Denisovans, and almost immediately, the story of humanity became far more complicated. Now the bracelet itself is dated to around 40,000 years ago, maybe even earlier. When you think about human technology at that time, you might imagine rough stone tools, wooden spears, and basic survival gear. But this bracelet is something else entirely. It's made from a dark green chlorite, a stone not found near the cave, but instead sourced from far away, meaning the Denisovans had access to trade routes or were capable of traveling long distances. That alone is impressive, but the real shock lies in how the bracelet was crafted. When researchers examined it closely, they found that it had been carefully polished with extraordinary precision. The surface is smooth and symmetrical, showing signs of advanced techniques. Even more baffling, one of the holes drilled into the stone appears to have been made with a high-speed rotary tool. This isn't just speculation. Under a microscope, the marks left behind suggest the use of a tool that spun at extremely high speeds, something you wouldn't expect from a culture that lived tens of thousands of years ago. To put it simply, it looked like something created using technology far beyond what archaeologists believed was possible at that time. This leads to the unsettling question: how did they do it? Was it a skill passed down from generations of experimentation? Was it the result of lost knowledge that we have since forgotten? Or could it suggest that the Denisovans had capabilities we haven't fully recognized? The bracelet wasn't just a piece of jewelry either. Tiny fragments of drilled holes suggest it may have once been fastened with cords, or even used as part of a larger ornament. Its placement inside the cave, along with other artifacts, has led some to believe it may have carried spiritual or symbolic meaning. Perhaps it was worn only by important figures, or used in rituals we can no longer understand. What makes the Denisovan bracelet so extraordinary is that it forces us to rethink the timeline of human innovation. We like to imagine that progress has been slow and steady, that early humans were primitive and only gradually developed the technologies that shaped civilization. But this bracelet challenges that idea. It is so advanced, so carefully made, that it suggests a leap of knowledge much earlier than expected. Some researchers go so far as to say that the bracelet looks almost out of place, as if it belongs to a different era entirely. If you showed it to someone today, they might assume it was a piece of modern jewelry, maybe even a designer creation. The precision is that remarkable, but when you realize it's tens of thousands of years old, it becomes something entirely different. This isn't the only mystery tied to the Denisovans. Genetic evidence shows that they interbred with both Neanderthals and modern humans, leaving traces of their DNA behind in populations today. People in parts of Asia and Oceania still carry Denisovan genetic markers, meaning their story continues to this day. And yet, despite this connection, we know almost nothing about them. They lived in Siberia, but traces of their genes appear far away, suggesting they traveled vast distances or had networks far beyond what we assume. The bracelet, then, is not just an isolated artifact, it's a window into a world we barely understand. Imagine for a moment the Denisovan who made it. Someone sat down with a rough piece of green stone, knowing exactly how to shape it, polish it, and drill into it with perfect accuracy. They may have used tools we haven't found yet. They may have passed this skill down from others before them. Or perhaps, this was the work of a specialist, someone who devoted their life to craftsmanship, in an era we often assume was consumed entirely by survival. That possibility alone reshapes how we see them. The Denisovan bracelet has sparked debates far outside archaeology. Some suggest it is evidence of lost civilizations, cultures that rose and fell long before the ones we know in history books. Others point to it as proof that human intelligence and creativity have always been more complex than we give credit for. And then there are the more speculative theories, that the Denisovans may have had contact with knowledge or influences we cannot trace today. Regardless of which interpretation you prefer, the bracelet remains undeniable proof of something extraordinary. It's not just an artifact, it's a challenge to our understanding. It forces us to ask whether the story of human history is much older, much deeper, and far stranger than we have been taught. As you picture it now, the green stone polished to perfection, resting in the dark silence of a Siberian cave for tens of thousands of years, consider how easily it might have remained undiscovered. If archaeologists hadn't carefully sifted through the soil of Denisova Cave, this object might still be hidden, its story untold. And yet here it is, in our museums and laboratories, whispering a truth that cannot be ignored. The Denisovan bracelet reminds us that history is full of gaps. Each discovery is like a small light in the darkness, revealing just enough to show us that there is still so much more we don't know. Perhaps there are more Denisovan artifacts waiting to be found, more pieces of their lost world hidden in caves, buried beneath the soil, or resting in forgotten landscapes. If one bracelet can rewrite the story of early human technology, imagine what else could be out there. And so, the mystery of the Denisovan bracelet endures. A green stone, carved with impossible precision, left behind by a people we barely understand. Was it just a piece of jewelry, or was it something more? Was it proof of knowledge we've lost, or a reminder that intelligence has always existed in forms we have yet to recognize? Whatever the answer may be, the bracelet remains a quiet but powerful symbol of how little we truly know about the ancient world. The Trident of Paracas. Along the arid coastal desert of southern Peru, stretching across the sandy cliffs and dry hills of the Paracas Peninsula, lies a mystery that has puzzled archaeologists, historians, and travelers for centuries. Known as the Paracas Candelabra, or sometimes called the Trident of Paracas, this enormous geoglyph rises from the earth like a symbol carved by giants. Viewed from the sea or the air, its size becomes apparent. It is over 180 meters tall and 60 meters wide, but while its shape is simple, a long central line with 3 prongs branching off, its meaning, origin, and purpose remain deeply mysterious. To fully grasp the Trident of Paracas, we must first understand its environment. The Paracas Peninsula is harsh, dry, and windswept, seemingly inhospitable for sustained human activity. Despite this, evidence shows that ancient cultures thrived here thousands of years ago. They were skilled in irrigation, agriculture, and ceremonial practices, but carving a massive geoglyph into the side of a hill, in a location highly visible from the sea, suggests something beyond mere survival. It hints at intention, purpose, and perhaps communication with forces or beings beyond the earth. The geoglyph itself is best seen from a distance, or from the vantage of the ocean. Sailors passing the peninsula would have been greeted by this strange, linear figure etched into the desert sands. The lines are shallow, yet precise, carved directly into the earth by removing the top layer of soil to reveal lighter subsoil beneath. Over time, despite erosion and shifting sands, the trident has remained remarkably visible. How did these ancient peoples create such a large, precise figure without modern tools or measurement techniques? The question remains unanswered. Interpretations of the trident's purpose vary widely. Some scholars believe it served as a navigational marker for sailors. Positioned where it could be easily seen from the ocean, the geoglyph could have indicated safe harbors, hidden water sources, or ritual landing points. Others suggest it had a spiritual or ceremonial function. The shape itself, with its 3 prongs, resembles depictions of candelabras or tridents in other ancient cultures, symbols often associated with water, power, or the divine. Could it have represented a deity, a protective symbol, or a connection to the cosmos? Adding to the mystery is the age of the trident. Estimates suggest it may date back to between 200 BCE and 100 CE, but some argue it could be even older, potentially predating known civilizations in the region. Carbon dating of nearby settlements, pottery, and organic remains points to an active culture capable of intricate work during that time. Yet the geoglyph's exact purpose and who precisely created it remain uncertain. The Paracas candelabra is not the only enigmatic feature in this region. The Paracas culture is known for its elaborate textiles, advanced irrigation systems, and burial practices, including elongated skulls found in the nearby necropolis. The skulls, stretched through binding during infancy, suggest ritualistic or symbolic intentions. These skulls and the trident share a connection. Both indicate a culture deeply invested in symbols, representation, and perhaps communication with the spiritual or celestial world. Viewed from above, the trident's lines converge with mathematical simplicity. Its three-pronged design echoes shapes seen in other ancient geoglyphs and symbolic carvings around the world, suggesting that the creators were not only artistic but also had an understanding of geometry and proportion far beyond what we might expect from a desert culture of that era. Some theorists even speculate that the geoglyph aligns with certain astronomical events, casting long shadows during solstices or marking the position of celestial bodies in the sky. Whether intentional or coincidental, this adds another layer of intrigue. Over the centuries, the trident has inspired myths and legends. Local folklore often describes it as a sacred symbol left by the gods, a guide for travelers, or even a warning. Some stories suggest it points to hidden treasures or underground tunnels. Others link it to the sea, claiming that it marks a gateway between worlds or realms. While these tales cannot be verified, they speak to the enduring power of this image in human imagination. Modern researchers continue to study the trident with aerial surveys, satellite imagery, and geophysical analysis. Despite these advanced tools, the deeper meaning remains elusive. The lines are simple, yet they speak to a sophistication in design, an understanding of visibility, scale, and placement. It is a deliberate creation, meant to last, meant to communicate across time and distance, perhaps to people whose names and stories have been lost to history. In the quiet desert of Paracas, the wind moves softly across the geoglyph. Shadows shift across the prongs as the sun rises and sets. Travelers, scientists, and curious visitors cannot help but feel a sense of awe and wonder. The trident's purpose may never be fully known, but its presence endures as a reminder of a culture that valued symbols, communication, and the mysteries of the natural and spiritual world. The trident of Paracas teaches us something subtle but profound. Even in the most remote and inhospitable places, humans have always sought to leave a mark, to create, to communicate, and to wonder. It invites contemplation, reflection, and imagination, and as we leave the desert behind, the trident remains, etched in the sands, a quiet sentinel of the past, whispering stories across time to anyone willing to listen. The Cernabas giant. Nestled in the gentle rolling hills of Dorset, England, there lies a figure so vast and mysterious that it has captured the imagination of visitors for centuries. This figure, known as the Cernabas giant, stretches over 55 meters in height, etched into the chalk hillside overlooking the small village of Cernabas. From a distance, it appears almost like a guardian watching over the valley, its massive form carved directly into the earth, with limbs spread, body exposed, and a long club held firmly in one hand. The giant is more than a simple carving, its sheer scale is astounding. Carved into chalk that gleams white under sunlight, the figure is visible for miles around. The placement of the figure on a steep hillside allows it to be seen from the valley below, giving it an imposing presence. Its design is simple yet deliberate, an unmistakable human figure, stylized in a way that captures both strength and authority. But beyond its form, its origins remain shrouded in mystery, and the questions surrounding it are as enduring as the figure itself. Scholars have long debated the age of the Cernabas giant. Some suggest it could date back to the late Saxon period, around the 10th century, while others propose it was created in the early modern period, perhaps as a political or religious statement during times of upheaval in England. Archaeological evidence is limited, as chalk geoglyphs are easily eroded and difficult to date accurately. What is clear, however, is that the giant has been a landmark for generations, recorded in maps, writings, and local traditions. The giant's purpose is equally mysterious. One popular theory is that it served as a fertility symbol. Folklore suggests that women who wished to conceive children would visit the site, perhaps walking around the figure or even sleeping near it. Pilgrimages of this nature were recorded as far back as the 17th century. Another theory links the giant to ancient pagan rituals, a remnant of older beliefs in fertility, protection, and the land's spiritual energy. Some historians propose it may have been a political symbol, created to mock or intimidate rivals during times of local strife. Despite centuries of speculation, no definitive evidence confirms any of these theories. The giant's features, a prominent phallus and muscular limbs, certainly support the fertility theory, but their stylization may have other meanings lost to time. Its very simplicity adds to its mystique. Unlike elaborate carvings with inscriptions or clear cultural markers, the Cernobos giant is open to interpretation, inviting viewers to project their own beliefs, fears, and hopes onto its chalked form. Natural forces have also played a role in shaping the giant. Over time, rain, wind, and vegetation have eroded parts of the figure, necessitating periodic restoration by local communities. These restorations, sometimes controversial, highlight the delicate balance between preserving history and altering it. Archaeologists and conservationists debate how much modern intervention is acceptable while maintaining authenticity. Yet, even with these challenges, the figure remains remarkably intact, continuing to awe visitors and locals alike. The giant's cultural impact extends beyond the hillside. It has inspired artists, writers, and historians for centuries, appearing in literature, paintings, and travel accounts. Some see it as a symbol of England's deep-rooted connection to the land and its history, while others focus on its mysterious nature, questioning who carved it, why, and what message it was meant to convey. The ambiguity of the giant allows it to transcend simple explanations, becoming a canvas for imagination and speculation. Modern technology has provided new insights. Aerial surveys and remote sensing have allowed researchers to study the figure's proportions, construction techniques, and surrounding landscape. These studies suggest careful planning and considerable effort, indicating that the creators had a precise vision and the means to execute it on a monumental scale. Yet, even with these findings, the giant's true origin and purpose remain elusive. Visiting the site today, one can stand at the base of the hillside and look up at the towering figure. The surrounding countryside is quiet, the fields stretching gently away, interrupted only by the figure's striking presence. The wind rustles through the grass, and in the fading light, the giant seems almost alive, a sentinel of time, a silent witness to centuries of history. The Cernobos giant reminds us that humans have always sought to leave marks on the land, symbols that endure, that communicate, and that invite curiosity. Its mystery is part of its allure, a testament to the creativity, intention, and imagination of those who came before. And as the sun sets over the hills, the giant stands quietly, etched into the chalk, continuing to provoke wonder, speculation, and a deep sense of connection to the past. The Dogu figurines of Japan. Deep within the history of Japan, long before cities, written records, or even modern civilization, there existed a people who left behind one of the most mysterious and captivating artifacts of the ancient world, the Dogu figurines. These small clay figures, created during the Jomon period, are remarkable not only for their intricate craftsmanship but also for the questions they continue to raise about the people who made them, their beliefs, and their way of life. The Jomon period stretches from roughly 14,000 BCE to 300 BCE, a time when Japan was still a land of dense forests, rivers, and mountains. The people of this era were primarily hunter-gatherers, living in small communities and developing some of the earliest pottery in human history. Among their many creations, the Dogu figurines stand out. Typically made of clay, these figurines vary in size, from as small as a few centimeters to nearly half a meter tall. Yet it is not their size that makes them extraordinary. It is the detail and style embedded within each figure. The Dogu are often humanoid in shape, with exaggerated features, large eyes, and intricate patterns adorning their bodies. Some have disproportionately wide hips, others elongated limbs, and many display patterns that some researchers suggest might represent clothing, tattoos, or ritual markings. Many of the figures appear to wear masks or helmets, and some have features that are almost alien in appearance, giving them an otherworldly quality. The purpose of these figurines remains a mystery. Archaeologists and historians have debated their meaning for decades. One prevalent theory suggests that the Dogu were used for ritual or spiritual purposes, possibly connected to fertility, health, or protection. The exaggerated features, particularly the wide hips and prominent eyes, may have symbolized fertility or the power of the life-giving forces. Some believe that these figurines served as talismans, used in ceremonies to ensure safe childbirth, good harvests, or healing from disease. Another intriguing theory proposes that the Dogu were symbolic representations of humans themselves, perhaps embodying ancestors, spirits, or deities. The care and detail with which each figurine was crafted suggests that they held significant cultural or spiritual importance. Unlike simple toys or decorative items, Dogu appear to have been intentionally designed for more profound purposes, serving as connections between the physical and spiritual worlds. The craftsmanship of the Dogu is equally fascinating. Despite the lack of modern tools, the Jomon people achieved remarkable detail and uniformity. Each figure was shaped by hand, often with patterns incised or impressed into the clay using cords, sticks, or other implements. The clay was then fired at relatively low temperatures, producing durable, reddish-brown figures that have survived thousands of years. The level of precision and creativity displayed in these small artifacts continues to astonish researchers today. One of the most puzzling aspects of the Dogu figurines is the recurring motif of large, almond-shaped eyes, sometimes giving the impression that the figures are observing the world around them. Some scholars have speculated that this was intentional, perhaps meant to embody a spiritual awareness or otherworldly insight. Others have suggested that the eyes symbolize a protective quality, watching over the people and their communities. The ambiguity leaves room for imagination, allowing each viewer to interpret the figures in their own way. Interestingly, Dogu are rarely found in domestic settings. Most have been discovered buried in the ground, often broken or intentionally deformed. This suggests that they were part of ritual practices, perhaps created for a specific ceremony, and then deliberately retired afterward. The act of breaking or burying the figurines may have been symbolic, part of a spiritual process meant to release their power or return them to the earth. The distribution of Dogu figurines across Japan is also notable. They are found from Hokkaido in the north to Kyushu in the south, indicating that this practice was widespread among Jomon communities. Yet each region produced slightly different styles, hinting at local traditions, beliefs, and artistic influences. Some are simple and abstract, while others are highly detailed, reflecting variations in both skill and cultural significance. Modern researchers continue to study these enigmatic figures, using technology such as 3D scanning and chemical analysis to uncover more about their origins, materials, and methods of construction. Despite these efforts, many questions remain unanswered. We still do not know the full extent of their symbolic meanings, the specifics of their rituals, or the reasons why this practice eventually disappeared with the end of the Jomon period. For visitors to Japan today, seeing Dogu figurines in museums offers a quiet glimpse into a world long past. Their small size belies the depth of their cultural significance. Standing before one, it is easy to imagine the hands that shaped it, the rituals it participated in, and the people who entrusted their hopes, fears, and prayers to this simple yet profound form of art. The Dogu figurines remind us that human creativity and spirituality extend far back into our history. Even in a time before written records, before cities and kingdoms, people sought ways to connect with the world, to influence it, and to express their beliefs. These small clay figures carry whispers of a long-lost culture, silent yet full of meaning, inviting us to slow down, to reflect, and to imagine the lives of those who came before us. And so, the Dogu figurines of Japan remain, quietly, patiently, across millennia, continuing to intrigue, mystify, and inspire those who take the time to observe their ancient, enigmatic forms. The Blythe intaglios. In the quiet, vast expanse of California's Colorado desert, near the small town of Blythe, lie some of the most mysterious and awe-inspiring figures ever created by humans. These are known as the Blythe intaglios, massive geoglyphs etched into the desert floor. Unlike typical art that can be easily moved or admired up close, these figures are so large that they can only be fully appreciated from above. Their sheer scale and precision invite wonder, curiosity, and endless speculation about their creators and purpose. The Blythe intaglios are estimated to be hundreds, perhaps even thousands of years old. They depict a variety of human and animal forms, with the most famous among them being a series of giant humanoid figures, some measuring over 170 feet in length. Other geoglyphs represent animals, some resembling serpents, dogs, and even abstract shapes whose meanings remain elusive. Each figure is created by scraping away the dark surface soil, revealing the lighter earth beneath, a method that has preserved them remarkably well over the centuries despite the harsh desert environment. The origin of the Blythe intaglios is a subject of fascination. Scholars generally agree that they were created by Native American communities, though exactly which group remains uncertain. Many believe that the Mojave, Quechan, or other regional tribes may have been responsible, drawing on rich oral traditions and spiritual practices that are no longer fully known to us. The sheer size of the figures suggests a communal effort, an endeavor requiring careful planning, coordination, and an understanding of geometry far beyond what one might expect from small desert communities. The purpose of these geoglyphs remains one of the greatest mysteries. Many researchers propose that they had ceremonial or spiritual significance. Some suggest that they were used in rituals related to fertility, hunting, or communication with the spirit world. Others speculate that the figures were created as paths or markers for ritualistic processions, aligning with astronomical events or seasonal cycles. The elongated forms of the humanoid figures, the outstretched arms, and the symmetrical patterns all hint at meanings that may never be fully understood. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Blythe intaglios is that, unlike the Nazca lines of Peru, which share a similar scale and style, the Blythe figures are located in an environment that is harsh and unforgiving. The desert heat, wind, and shifting sands would have made their creation and maintenance incredibly challenging. This adds to the mystery. Why invest so much effort in something so impermanent in the eyes of human lifespans, yet so enduring across centuries? The figures were first documented by modern observers in the 1930s, though local tribes had long been aware of their existence. Early aerial surveys revealed the full scale and complexity of the geoglyphs, prompting comparisons to the lines and figures found in other parts of the world. Researchers marveled at the precision with which the shapes were drawn, noting that they retained their proportions over such vast distances despite the absence of modern surveying tools. Many scholars believe that the Blythe intaglios served as a connection between the human and spiritual realms. Some tribal traditions describe dances, ceremonies, and offerings intended to honor ancestors or solicit guidance and blessings. The figures may have been physical manifestations of these beliefs, carved directly into the earth as a permanent record of human intention, faith, and creativity. There are also stories that suggest the Blythe intaglios were created to communicate with beings from the sky. The figure's visibility from the air, though likely unintentional given the time period, has led some researchers and enthusiasts to speculate about connections to otherworldly visitors. While there is no concrete evidence to support such ideas, the sheer scale and mystery of the figures invite the imagination to wander, to consider possibilities far beyond the ordinary. Despite decades of study, much about the Blythe intaglios remains unknown. Their creators, their purpose, and even the exact age of some figures are still subjects of ongoing research. Yet their beauty and enigmatic presence continue to captivate those who take the time to observe them. Walking along the desert floor, tracing the contours of these enormous shapes, one can feel a sense of connection across time, an awareness of the people who labored to leave a mark, a message, or perhaps a prayer upon the earth. Today, the Blythe intaglios are protected as a cultural and historical site, recognized for their significance and preserved for future generations. Visitors approach the desert with quiet reverence, mindful of the fragile soil and the stories etched into it. Even without fully understanding their meaning, one can feel the energy, intention, and care embedded in every line and curve. The Blythe intaglios remind us that even in the most remote and harsh environments, humans have sought to express themselves, to communicate, and to leave a mark upon the world. They are a testament to creativity, devotion, and the enduring mystery of our past. And as the desert wains move slowly across the sandy landscape, these figures remain, silent yet powerful, inviting contemplation, wonder, and the gentle, quiet exploration of history that stretches back far beyond our lifetimes. The Tomb of the Sunken Skulls. In the quiet forests of Sweden, near the serene waters of Canal Jordan, lies a discovery that challenges our understanding of ritual, death, and human behavior in ancient times. Archaeologists exploring this tranquil landscape were astonished to uncover a site filled with human skulls, arranged and submerged in the shallow waters of a prehistoric lake. This site, now known as Canal Jordan, has become one of the most intriguing and mysterious archaeological locations in northern Europe. The discovery consists primarily of carefully positioned skulls, many with evidence of deliberate modification. Some skulls bear cut marks or signs of defleshing, suggesting complex mortuary practices. Others are placed atop wooden stakes, raised above the sediment of the lakebed, almost as if on display. Beneath the water, the skulls have remained remarkably preserved, allowing researchers to study their features and learn more about the people who once lived in this region. Radiocarbon dating places the Canal Jordan skulls in the early Neolithic period, roughly 8,000 years ago. At this time, people in Scandinavia were transitioning from a purely hunter-gatherer lifestyle to more settled, complex societies. The presence of these skulls in the lake suggests that they were not simply discarded remains, but rather part of a deliberate and highly ritualized practice. One of the most striking aspects of the site is the level of care and precision involved. The skulls were carefully selected, often showing signs of intentional shaping. The placement in the water seems purposeful, hinting at beliefs about the journey of the soul, purification, or communication with the spiritual world. Each skull seems to have been chosen for a reason, and the arrangement in the shallow lake may have held symbolic significance that has been lost to time. The site raises many questions. Why were the skulls submerged rather than buried? Were they meant as offerings to water deities, ancestors, or spirits of the land? Some researchers propose that the skulls represent a form of ancestor veneration, a way to honor or communicate with those who had passed on. Others suggest a more macabre ritual, perhaps related to power, control, or marking of territory. Whatever the exact purpose, the careful preparation and placement of the skulls indicates that this was a practice imbued with deep cultural meaning. Archaeologists have also found that some skulls bear evidence of facial reconstruction or deliberate modification, such as removal of jawbones or smoothing of surfaces. This may indicate attempts to create recognizable figures or to emphasize certain traits, perhaps reflecting the identity, status, or symbolic importance of the individuals. Such practices show a level of sophistication in understanding anatomy and a cultural focus on the human head as a vessel of significance. Canal Jordan's discovery challenges our assumptions about early European societies. It reminds us that even in the distant past, humans had complex beliefs about death, the afterlife, and the relationship between the living and the dead. These skulls are not merely relics of the past, they are messages, echoes of rituals, and beliefs that we may never fully comprehend. The tranquil setting of the lake, with its still waters reflecting the sky above, contrasts sharply with the story told by the submerged skulls. The calm surface hides centuries of ritual and reverence, creating a sense of quiet mystery. Standing at the edge of the site, one can imagine the ceremonies that might have taken place, rituals performed in silence, with careful placement and intent, honoring the cycle of life and death. Over time, Canal Jordan has become a vital site for researchers seeking to understand the social and spiritual lives of early humans in Scandinavia. Each skull offers insights into diet, health, and ancestry, revealing connections between individuals and the broader community. Forensic analysis has helped reconstruct faces, giving modern observers a glimpse of the people who once lived and died here. Despite decades of research, much about Canal Jordan remains unknown. We can study the physical evidence, but the deeper meanings, the prayers, fears, and intentions behind these rituals, are lost to time. Yet the site continues to inspire fascination and quiet reflection. The sun glinting on the water, the stillness of the lake, and the eerie presence of the sunken skulls create an atmosphere that is both serene and unsettling, inviting contemplation about mortality and memory. The Tomb of the Sunken Skulls is a testament to the enduring human desire to understand life and death, to create meaning in the face of the unknown, and to leave traces of ourselves for future generations. The people who placed these skulls in the waters of Canal Jordan may be gone, but their presence lingers, silent yet powerful, beneath the calm surface of the lake. As we imagine the rituals, the hands that carefully positioned each skull, and the lives that preceded this act, we are reminded that history is not only written in texts and artifacts, but also in the quiet, deliberate gestures that shape the world for centuries to come. The Headless Vikings of Dorset. Along the quiet, rolling hills of Dorset, England, lies a discovery that seems frozen in time, whispering tales of violence, conquest, and ritual. Archaeologists unearthed a mass grave containing the remains of Viking warriors. But there is something chilling about this site. Many of the bodies were decapitated, their skulls severed from their torsos. This grim discovery has intrigued experts and historians alike, offering a window into a dark chapter of Viking activity in Britain. The excavation revealed dozens of skeletons, each positioned with care in the grave, yet almost all lacked heads. Evidence suggests that these Vikings did not die in battle on the field, but were executed and buried in a ritualistic manner. The careful placement of their bodies hints at a deliberate practice, one that raises questions about the intersection of warfare, punishment, and cultural customs during the Viking Age. Radiocarbon dating places the Dorset grave in the late 9th to early 10th century, a period of frequent conflict and shifting power dynamics in Britain. During this time, Viking raids were common, and communities had to defend themselves against invaders from the north. Yet the headless nature of these remains points to more than mere casualties of war. Some researchers believe that decapitation may have been a form of ritualized justice or a warning to others. In Viking culture, beheading was sometimes used as a symbolic act, emphasizing submission or disgrace, particularly against enemies. Further examination of the remains revealed traces of blunt force trauma on the cervical vertebrae, indicating that the decapitations were deliberate and carefully executed. The positioning of the bodies within the grave also suggests a level of ceremonial awareness. Some skeletons were aligned in rows, facing a particular direction, hinting at a belief system or ritual practice associated with death. It is possible that the bodies were arranged to honor the dead, to convey a message to the living, or even to satisfy spiritual or religious beliefs of the time. Archaeologists have also noted differences in the grave goods associated with the Vikings. While some skeletons were found with remnants of weapons or simple personal items, others had no artifacts at all. This inconsistency raises questions about the social status of the individuals and whether certain prisoners were treated differently in death. The presence or absence of grave goods might indicate a hierarchy among captives, or reflect specific punitive practices. The mass grave of headless Vikings challenges our understanding of the Viking Age. Popular culture often portrays Vikings as fierce warriors who fought on the battlefield, yet this discovery reveals a more complex and sometimes brutal reality. The decapitations suggest not only violence but also ritual and social messaging, showing that death in this era could be both punitive and symbolic. Experts have also explored the possibility of local involvement in the execution of these Vikings. Dorset, with its strategic location along the coast, may have been a site of conflict between native communities and Viking invaders. The mass grave could represent a collective effort by the local population to deter future attacks, turning the decapitated bodies into a warning for other potential raiders. Despite centuries of study, the identities of these Vikings remain largely unknown. Were they raiders who had overstepped their bounds, prisoners of war, or traitors punished by their own people? The lack of written records from this period leaves much to speculation, but the physical evidence continues to tell a story, one of violence, ritual, and human behavior that has endured beneath the soil of Dorset for over a millennium. The serene landscape above the grave today contrasts sharply with the grim history below. Rolling fields, quiet streams, and distant woodlands conceal the past, allowing the land to reclaim its peace. Yet beneath the earth, the skeletons of these headless Vikings lie in silent testimony to the events that unfolded centuries ago. Standing near the site, it is easy to imagine the tension, fear, and sorrow that accompanied their final moments, and to feel the weight of history pressing gently against the present. This discovery has sparked fascination among archaeologists, historians, and the public alike. By studying the bones, the trauma, and the burial arrangements, researchers gain a glimpse into the complex social and cultural dynamics of the Viking Age. Every fragment of bone, every carefully placed skeleton, offers insight into practices of punishment, honor, and ritual. Even in death, these Vikings tell a story, a narrative that merges the brutality of human history with the mystery of the unknown. The headless Vikings of Dorset remain a haunting symbol of the past. Their silent forms evoke questions about identity, justice, and belief, inviting us to reflect on how societies deal with enemies, outsiders, and transgression. As we contemplate their lives and deaths, we are reminded of the fragility of life, the inevitability of mortality, and the enduring imprint of human behavior across time. Through this mass grave, Dorset offers us not just a glimpse into Viking history, but also a quiet meditation on the interplay between violence and ritual, punishment and memory, life and death. The headless remains speak softly across the centuries, urging us to listen, to learn, and to ponder the mysteries of our shared human past. The Ice Maiden of Siberia. High in the remote Altai Mountains of Siberia, a frozen secret lay hidden beneath layers of permafrost for more than 2 millennia. In the 1990s, archaeologists made a discovery that would captivate the world, a remarkably preserved mummy of a Scythian woman, now known as the Ice Maiden, or the Siberian Ice Maiden. Her body, clothed in intricate garments adorned with jewelry, and carefully buried, offered an unprecedented glimpse into the life, death, and ritual practices of the Pazyryk culture. The Ice Maiden, estimated to have lived around 2,500 years ago, was discovered in a tomb cut into a hilltop, surrounded by burial mounds known as kurgans. These earthen mounds, typical of the Pazyryk nomads, served as final resting places for the elite members of society. What made this tomb extraordinary was not just the preservation of her body, but the incredible state of the textiles, ornaments, and even tattoos she bore, evidence of a culture with artistic sophistication and ritual depth. Her body was positioned carefully, legs bent, arms crossed, and head turned slightly to one side. The Ice Maiden's attire included a fur-lined coat, woolen garments, and felt boots. Alongside her, archaeologists discovered a collection of funerary items, carved wooden objects, implements of daily life, and exquisite jewelry, including a headdress encrusted with precious stones and gold. These artifacts indicated her high status within the Pazyryk community, possibly as a noblewoman or priestess. One of the most fascinating features of the Ice Maiden is her tattoos. Detailed animal motifs, including mythical beasts and stylized creatures, were etched into her skin. These tattoos were not mere decoration, they held symbolic and spiritual significance. Scholars suggest that they may have represented protection, status, or connections to the spiritual world, offering insights into beliefs and practices that otherwise left no written record. The Ice Maiden's tomb also revealed insights into burial practices of the Pazyryk nomads. The permafrost had acted as a natural preservative, keeping her body, clothing, and ritual objects intact for over 2,500 years. Alongside her body were sacrificed horses, carefully positioned and adorned with elaborate bridles and harnesses. These equine companions reflected the nomadic lifestyle of the Pazyryk people, emphasizing the importance of horses in their society and possibly serving as guides for the deceased into the afterlife. Radiocarbon dating and dendrochronology confirmed the age of the tomb and its contents. Scientists marveled at the level of preservation, as even her hair, nails, and some soft tissue remained remarkably intact. Analysis of her remains revealed not only her age at death, estimated around 25 years, but also clues about her health, diet, and lifestyle. She had likely suffered a physically demanding life, consistent with a nomadic existence, yet her burial signaled reverence and care from her community. The Ice Maiden also sparked discussions about the social and cultural structure of the Pazyryk people. Her elaborate tomb suggests a hierarchical society, with significant attention paid to funerary rituals. The inclusion of horses, clothing, and ritual artifacts indicates that she may have held a position of authority, religious significance, or even symbolic importance within the tribe. These insights illuminate a culture otherwise known primarily through artifacts and oral traditions, offering a rare window into the lives of ancient Siberian nomads. Over the years, the Ice Maiden has become a symbol of Siberia's archaeological richness. Her discovery challenged assumptions about nomadic societies, revealing their artistic skill, spiritual depth, and ritualistic sophistication. Researchers continue to study her remains, applying modern technologies such as CT scanning, isotopic analysis, and DNA testing to uncover further details about her life, ancestry, and even the environmental conditions of her time. The discovery also raised ethical and cultural considerations. Local communities view the Ice Maiden as a sacred ancestral figure, and debates over her display and preservation have led to discussions about repatriation and respectful treatment of human remains. Her story emphasizes the delicate balance between scientific exploration and cultural sensitivity, reminding us that archaeology is not only about uncovering the past, but also about honoring it. Today, the Ice Maiden remains one of the most remarkable archaeological finds in the world. Her frozen presence tells a story of life, death, and belief in a harsh and unforgiving landscape. Standing before her tomb, one can imagine the winds of the Altai Mountains, the rhythm of nomadic life, and the quiet reverence of a people who sought to honor their dead with care and artistry. Through the Ice Maiden of Siberia, we gain more than knowledge. We glimpse the humanity, spirituality, and resilience of a culture that flourished in isolation, leaving behind traces that whisper softly across the millennia, inviting us to listen and reflect on the lives of those who came long before us. The Hellenistic computer of the Salamis tablet. On the sun-warmed shores of Salamis, Greece, a seemingly ordinary slab of marble lies quietly in a museum display case, yet it holds secrets that stretch back more than 2 millennia. Known today as the Salamis tablet, this artifact, discovered in the late 19th century, is a Hellenistic counting device that hints at the sophisticated mathematical understanding of the ancient Greeks. At first glance, the Salamis tablet appears to be a simple stone slab, etched with lines, symbols, and notches. Its surface is divided into columns and rows, marked with grooves designed to hold small pebbles or counters. But beyond its simple appearance lies a tool that could calculate fractions, solve equations, and perform arithmetic operations. Scholars have long debated the purpose of the tablet. Yet one thing remains clear. The ancient Greeks were experimenting with numerical systems in ways far ahead of their time. The Hellenistic period, roughly spanning the 4th to 1st centuries BCE, was a time of remarkable intellectual achievement. Philosophy, science, and mathematics flourished in cities such as Alexandria and Athens, and the Greeks were fascinated with patterns, geometry, and logic. The Salamis tablet fits into this culture, revealing a practical application of abstract mathematical ideas. Researchers believe that it was used for commercial, educational, or astronomical purposes, providing a portable, reusable surface for calculations. The notches and grooves on the tablet correspond to a counting system that resembles both abacuses and other early calculation tools. By placing small stones or markers into these grooves, users could perform calculations, track debts, and even explore fractions. What is particularly remarkable is the sophistication of its layout, which suggests that users had a nuanced understanding of arithmetic and the ability to manipulate numbers in systematic ways. Though similar counting boards have been found in other ancient cultures, the Salamis tablet stands out for its size and complexity. Measuring approximately 150 centimeters long and 75 centimeters wide, it was likely used in a public or instructional setting rather than carried around, hinting at a culture that valued both learning and precision. Some scholars argue that it may have been an early teaching tool, helping students grasp the concepts of ratios, proportions, and geometric calculations. The tablet has also inspired debates about the origins of mechanical computation. While the Antikythera mechanism is often cited as the pinnacle of Greek technological achievement, the Salamis tablet suggests that Greeks were experimenting with systematic computation long before precision gears came into play. It highlights a continuous interest in numbers, patterns, and predictive tools, showing that the foundation for later inventions was laid through these simple yet ingenious devices. Archaeological context adds another layer of fascination. The Salamis tablet was discovered near a Hellenistic harbor, an area bustling with trade, travelers, and merchants. It is plausible that the tablet was used for practical purposes, such as calculating cargo loads, trading transactions, or managing taxes. Its design allowed for flexibility, enabling users to adapt calculations to a variety of scenarios, demonstrating the Greeks' ability to blend theoretical knowledge with everyday applications. Modern analysis has revealed that the tablet's markings correspond to complex calculations that may have been used to solve problems involving fractions, proportions, and even early forms of algebra. The arrangement of grooves and columns is methodical, hinting at a structured approach to problem solving that echoes later mathematical texts. The tablet may even have been used in conjunction with other teaching materials, providing a hands-on method for learning concepts that today we might take for granted. The Salamis tablet invites reflection not only on ancient mathematics but also on the broader human desire to understand and control the world through numbers. Each groove and notch represents a deliberate choice, a calculated step in the pursuit of knowledge. Holding a small counter, placing it in a groove, and moving it along a column could have allowed an ancient scholar to solve problems that, at the time, were considered challenging and abstract. Today, the Salamis tablet rests silently in a museum, its marble surface worn smooth by centuries of handling and contemplation. Visitors may walk past it, unaware of the intellectual achievement it represents. Yet for those who pause, the tablet offers a direct connection to the minds of ancient thinkers, to the culture of inquiry, curiosity, and methodical reasoning that shaped the Hellenistic world. As we gaze upon this unassuming slab of marble, we are reminded that even the simplest tools can embody profound understanding. The Salamis tablet is more than a counting device. It is a testament to human ingenuity, the quiet brilliance of minds seeking patterns and meaning, and the enduring legacy of a civilization that pursued knowledge with patience, precision, and care. Through the tablet, we glimpse a world where numbers were not just abstract symbols but instruments of thought, guiding commerce, education, and discovery. In the quiet of a museum hall, we can almost hear the soft clatter of counters, the careful placement of stones, and the focused contemplation of an ancient scholar, bridging the millennia in a calm, continuous whisper of understanding. The White Shaman rock art. In the quiet, arid landscapes of Texas, the canyons and cliffs hold stories carved and painted thousands of years ago. One site, known as White Shaman, is a remarkable testament to the artistic and spiritual expression of ancient peoples. Its rock art, preserved on limestone cliffs, offers a glimpse into the minds of those who lived long before modern records, carrying symbols and figures that remain mysterious and thought-provoking to this day. White Shaman is situated within the Pecos River region, an area rich in archaeological significance. The cliff paintings are composed of vivid reds, yellows, and blacks, preserved in the shelter of natural overhangs. These images include human-like figures, animals, and abstract geometric shapes. Scholars have debated their meaning for decades, suggesting connections to spiritual practices, astronomical observations, or symbolic storytelling. The name White Shaman comes from the depiction of a central anthropomorphic figure, thought by some researchers to represent a shaman or spiritual intermediary, painted in striking white pigment, standing out among the reds and blacks that surround it. The rock art's age has been estimated to span between 1,000 and 4,000 years, though dating rock art is notoriously challenging. Without organic material directly associated with the pigments, archaeologists rely on indirect methods, such as stylistic comparisons and dating of nearby habitation sites. Despite the uncertainty, it is widely agreed that White Shaman represents the work of early hunter-gatherer societies who inhabited the region and relied on both practical and symbolic knowledge to navigate their environment. The figures at White Shaman are not mere representations of everyday life. Many depict complex, abstract scenes that suggest ritualistic or ceremonial purposes. For example, human-like figures are shown with elongated limbs, headdresses, or symbolic appendages. Animals, including deer, bison, and birds, appear in both naturalistic and abstract forms, sometimes intertwined with geometric patterns or lines suggesting movement or connection. The compositions are not random. Their placement and orientation may reflect cosmological beliefs or seasonal cycles observed by these early peoples. One of the most striking aspects of White Shaman is its use of color. Red ochre, widely available in the region, forms the base of many figures. White, applied to the central shaman figure, creates a stark contrast, emphasizing its importance. Yellow and black pigments add depth, highlighting certain features or patterns. The skill required to apply these pigments to vertical cliff faces, often using natural brushes or fingers, demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of materials, technique, and visual communication. Scholars continue to debate the meaning behind White Shaman's imagery. Some suggest the figures represent shamanic journeys, connecting the physical world with spiritual or otherworldly realms. Others argue that the art documents communal rites, hunting magic, or social hierarchy within the group. The prevalence of geometric patterns, spirals, zigzags, and concentric circles has been interpreted as symbolic language, encoding stories, instructions, or knowledge that was passed down orally from one generation to the next. The location of White Shaman itself adds another layer of intrigue. The cliff overlooks the Pecos River, a vital source of water and resources. Its elevated position may have made it a ceremonial site, visible to the surrounding landscape, and possibly serving as a spiritual or social focal point. The natural acoustics of the cliffs, combined with the dramatic display of painted figures, could have amplified ritual experiences, creating an immersive environment that blended sight, sound, and symbolic meaning. In addition to its cultural significance, White Shaman contributes to our understanding of prehistoric human cognition. The complexity and abstraction of the imagery indicate advanced symbolic thought, planning, and communication. The artists were not merely recording the world around them, they were interpreting, conceptualizing, and expressing ideas that may have been deeply tied to their identity, spirituality, and worldview. Today, White Shaman remains a place of quiet contemplation. Researchers and visitors who approach the site often find themselves moving slowly, mindful of the fragile pigments and the centuries of history embedded in the rock. As the sun shifts over the cliffs, shadows cast by the figures create a sense of movement, a subtle animation that echoes the original intent of the artists. Standing before these images, one can almost feel the presence of the people who created them. Their hands brushing against the stone, their eyes focused on the symbols, and their minds attuned to the rhythms of life along the Pecos River. The legacy of White Shaman lies not only in its visual beauty, but in the connection it provides across time. Each line, shape, and color reflects a moment of human thought and expression, preserved for millennia. As we study the rock art, we are invited to slow down, to consider the continuity of human curiosity and creativity, and to reflect on the shared desire to make sense of the world through art and symbol. In the end, White Shaman is a quiet teacher. It reminds us that even in the most remote and arid landscapes, human ingenuity and expression flourish. Its figures speak across millennia, inviting us to imagine, to question, and to appreciate the depth of thought and feeling embedded in the earliest forms of visual storytelling. Here, on the cliffs of Texas, the past whispers softly, and if we listen closely, we can hear the echoes of a time when art, spirituality, and daily life were inseparably intertwined. The Cahokia Mounds of Illinois. Nestled along the Mississippi River in present-day Illinois, lies a vast and enigmatic landscape of earthen mounds, collectively known as Cahokia. For centuries, these mounds stood as silent witnesses to one of the most sophisticated pre-Columbian civilizations in North America. Today, their scale and arrangement continue to captivate archaeologists, historians, and visitors alike, offering a glimpse into a society that thrived long before European contact. Cahokia was the center of the Mississippian culture, which flourished between approximately 700 and 1400 AD. Unlike nomadic groups of the time, the Mississippians built permanent settlements, cultivated extensive agricultural fields, and established intricate social hierarchies. At its peak, Cahokia was home to tens of thousands of people, making it the largest city in North America north of Mexico during its era. The sheer number and size of the mounds reflect the complexity and ambition of this society. The most famous mound at Cahokia is Monk's Mound, a massive terraced structure that rises nearly 100 feet above the surrounding landscape. Covering more than 14 acres at its base, Monk's Mound is the largest prehistoric earthwork in the Americas. Its construction required immense labor, moving millions of cubic feet of soil by hand, likely using baskets and simple tools. The mound's size and prominence suggest it was a central hub for religious, political, and ceremonial activities, perhaps serving as the residence of the society's elite, or a platform for temples and other structures. Beyond Monk's Mound, Cahokia contains more than 80 other mounds of varying shapes and sizes. Some are conical burial mounds, others are rectangular platform mounds, and a few take the shape of effigies representing animals or spiritual beings. The diversity in mound design indicates that each may have served a unique purpose, from honoring leaders to marking sacred spaces or astronomical alignments. Scholars have discovered that some mounds align with solar events, such as solstices and equinoxes, suggesting an advanced understanding of astronomy among the Cahokians. Archaeological excavations at Cahokia have revealed extensive evidence of daily life, trade, and artistry. Artifacts include pottery, stone tools, ornaments, and ceremonial objects, each offering clues about the society's culture, religion, and social organization. Some items were made from materials sourced hundreds of miles away, indicating a vast trade network and the ability to connect with distant communities. Shells from the Gulf Coast, copper from the Great Lakes, and mica from the Appalachian region all found their way to Cahokia, highlighting the city's significance as a cultural and economic hub. Despite its sophistication, Cahokia eventually declined, and the reasons remain a topic of debate. Environmental pressures, such as flooding, soil depletion, or climate change may have undermined agricultural productivity. Social tensions or conflicts could have contributed to the population dispersing, while disease or resource scarcity might have further weakened the city. By the 14th century, much of Cahokia was abandoned, leaving the mounds as enduring monuments to a once great civilization. Today, Cahokia Mounds is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, preserved for its historical, cultural, and archaeological significance. Walking among the mounds, one can sense the rhythm of a vanished society, the labor, devotion, and vision required to transform the landscape into a ceremonial and communal center. The arrangement of the mounds suggests careful planning, perhaps reflecting cosmological beliefs, social hierarchies, or political power. Each mound tells a story, not only of the people who built it, but of the broader Mississippian culture that thrived across much of the Mississippi River Valley. Visitors often remark on the quiet grandeur of the site. Unlike modern cities, Cahokia's mounds do not dominate with stone and metal, but with earth and human effort, shaped by hands and feet over generations. The land itself becomes a living testament to the ingenuity and spirituality of its creators. As the wind moves across the grassy slopes, one can almost imagine the ceremonial gatherings, the sound of drums, the chants, and the rituals that once animated the mounds. Archaeologists continue to study Cahokia, uncovering new insights into social organization, trade, diet, and ceremonial life. Excavations reveal post holes from large wooden structures, hearths for communal cooking, and burial sites reflecting complex rituals. Analysis of pollen and plant remains sheds light on the agricultural practices that sustain the population, while isotopic studies of human remains reveal patterns of diet, health, and mobility. Each discovery adds layers of understanding, but also raises new questions, keeping the mystery of Cahokia alive. Cahokia Mounds reminds us that the Americas were home to advanced and complex societies long before European contact. The site challenges assumptions about pre-Columbian history, demonstrating innovation, community, and the capacity for large-scale social organization. Standing atop Monk's Mound, or gazing across the surrounding mounds, it becomes clear that the Mississippians possessed both vision and determination, transforming the landscape into a reflection of their culture and beliefs. In the end, Cahokia invites reflection. The mounds speak softly across the centuries, urging us to slow down, to consider the lives of those who built them, and to appreciate the ingenuity embedded in each earthen rise. They are monuments not only of soil and labor, but of human creativity, spirituality, and connection. In the quiet spaces between the mounds, one can sense the enduring legacy of a civilization that sought to shape both the earth and their understanding of the world.